Hello everybody, we welcome to the Three Rivers Avian Center virtual migration celebration on this wonderful May morning. I have with me Huli here, and we're going to talk to you about all sorts of things migratory and birds and pollinators. We have a special letter from the governor that we'd like to read to you. You could open that for me. Thank you. Greetings from Governor Justice. On behalf of the Mountain State, it is an honor to welcome you to the Three Rivers Avian Center's Virtual Migration Celebration 2021. The Three Rivers Avian Center, TRAC, is an organization dedicated to wild bird conservation and to educating and involving people in ecosystem stewardship. Whether it's veterinary and rehabilitation, environmental education, research and conservation, or species restoration, there is something for everyone at TRAC. The Migration Celebration features many different activities to pique a variety of interests, including a full tour of the facility, storytelling, Hanging Rock Raptor Observatory, experiments, and meet and greets with the nation's rarest wild birds. I can assure you that your experience will go above and beyond your expectation. Although this event had to be held virtually, I applaud your willingness to adapt to the current circumstances. This in no way changes the importance of this special event. Please accept my best wishes for a wonderful celebration. It's sure to be a great experience for one and all. Sincerely, Jim Justice, Governor. And we thank you very much for all that. Huli was found right after a big storm out in Cabell County, and some people had been to see one of the great Harry Potter movie openings. And, you know, when the Harry Potter series came out, everybody fell in love with owls, you know, and they looked at Huli as a little tiny chick that was maybe about 2 days old at the most, and they decided that she looked just like Hedwig, the star of the Harry Potter series, and they wanted to keep her just like in Harry Potter. Well, that is illegal to do, and this is the reason why. Took her home, and they didn't feed her enough food, they didn't right food, but worse than that, as she started to grow up, as her eyes started to focus, instead of focusing on Mom and Dad Great Horned Owl, they focused on the people that picked her up and took her home. And they loved on her and made her part of the family, and so she is what we call a human imprint. So she associates everything with humans. She doesn't associate with other birds very well. So she's with us for the rest of her life. We could have fixed the shoulder injury, but because they waited so long before we got her, she's now a permanent ambassador. She's going to live to be about 30 years old. She weighs a little bit over 4 pounds. You can see these great big talons here. They have a crushing grip measured at 300 pounds per square inch. So they can, that's measured at the tips of the talons. Extremely strong. So they can go after small things like mice and chipmunks. They can go after things as big as squirrels and raccoons. They love possums, but their favorite food in all the world is skunk. They have a perfectly fine sense of smell. It's about as good as yours and mine. So all I can say is skunk must taste really, really good, because most of the great horned owls we get smell like a skunk, and it's usually fresh. Welcome back, everybody. We do have a sort of funky internet connection today. No matter how much you test stuff, it doesn't always work the way you plan, right? Would you guys like to come for a tour? Absolutely. All right. Usually for the migration celebration, we're at Little Beaver State Park, and we have a full day long festival designed for family events, and it's stuff like bird walking and you know, tips for, you know, how to identify this, that, the other. We have a display of the raptors. We usually have storytelling and you know, crafts and all sorts of things you sort of get thrown in. But we don't have that option, thanks to COVID. So we'll be back next year with any luck at Little Beaver. But
really long leash when you do the bird
walking. Yeah, you need a long leash.
That's when they strap birds to your feet and then you can fly.
Well, here is what we're going to show you today. Here are our ambassadors. These are birds that have been turned into the Avian Center that we are able to heal up, but not well enough to go back out in the wild and survive. So these are our various ambassadors that we're going to show you today. They're permanent residents. They'll be with us for the rest of their lives. And this little guy here that you can see in the back here is Victor, the little gray guy. He's directly underneath the lights. You might want to come closer, Griffin, and see, too.
Yeah.
They probably can't see back there. Out in, as they used to say, radio land. I guess we call it Facebook land now.
They can't see in radio land at all.
No, they can't at all. Yep. Victor had a badly broken wing, the right wing, that healed, was in the process of healing very misaligned when he was turned in. He comes from Pocahontas County, and he was just a youngster. He was just a couple of months old. Whatever he happened to him, he collided with something, we don't know. But he was found hunting bugs, and he was pretty skinny. And so he had healed up enough that we couldn't go back in and re-break and reset it. So you can see he's partially flighted. He can make it almost from the one end of the cage to the other, but not quite. And back in the back on top of the door there, you might see the red-faced screech owl. And that's, her name is Olga, and she actually comes from Logan County. Now, screech owls are probably one of the most common owls that we have. They sort of have a little whinnying call. It's just one of their calls. They have, at last count, I counted over 20.
Wow.
At least. Yeah, you too. We'll get to him later. But they are cavity dwellers. You can make nest boxes for eastern screech owls, and you can see the 2 nest boxes that we have back there. That's pretty typical. We do have the holes closed because if we didn't, then both of them would be in there and you would not see them at all. So we would just point to a box and say, there's a screech owl. This is full grown. They don't get any bigger than this.
Oh, okay.
Victor is a male, and he weighs about 5 ounces, a little bit over. And Olga is a female. She weighs between 6 and 7 ounces.
And how old are they?
Victor now is about 1.5 years. We don't know about Olga. She came in as an adult. She was a victim of being hit by a vehicle down in Logan County. And she's got a little bit of a wing problem, but the biggest problem that she has is that her left eye was, when she got hit by the vehicle, it detached the retina. And once in a blue moon you can get those to heal back up, but it's very rare. It only happens in young birds, really, if it does at all. And but she didn't heal up from it, so she's blind in that one eye.
So in a case like that, does the motorist call you and say, we have this hurt owl, or how do you find out where the bird is?
It can happen that way. It can be that the person finds it and then turns it into a local veterinarian. We do have what we call intake veterinarians spread throughout the southern part of West Virginia. So if somebody calls here and says, hey, I hit an owl last night, what do I do? We find out where they are, and usually they're within an hour or maybe an hour and a half or so of one of our intake veterinarians or us. You know, we also have a network of transport volunteers that help us move birds from point A to point B, and we couldn't do without them. So we've had calls go into 911 centers. We're hooked up with all the 911 centers. We've had state police, say, oh, by the way, and it can just be somebody out, hiking or walking or whatever. One of the interesting things that's happened with COVID happening is that we've seen a much higher intake rate than we have had ever.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably because people are home more and outdoors more and doing more. Yeah. So we had our biggest year last year ever.
That's crazy.
So it was crazy. Yeah, very crazy. But screech owls they eat a lot of small rodents primarily, but during the summertime they also eat a lot of what we call juicy bugs, things like grasshoppers, cicadas, katydids, that sort of thing. They love moths. So it's not unusual to see them coming with a big old moth in their face. And they'll raise 2 to 3. Moths are good. They're pollinators. They're good.
They're very good.
They're sitting right in your face.
It's not in my face.
It's not in the face, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And this one here, there is no bird in here yet. And that's because this is a bird that we're about to get. In order to do what we do with rehabilitation and education permits, we have to be permitted through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so every bird that we have come in has to be reported to them. If we're going to keep it, we have to get written permission from them to do it. And if we don't have the permit, then we can't have the bird. And this is true of anybody. So we have our permits, and this cage is about to become, hopefully, a home to a very young barn owl who was hatched out in the eastern panhandle to a breeder up there. And hopefully by the end of May, we'll be having a young male barn owl, come over, and this will be his cage. We used to have a barn owl for over 24 years. His name was Twister, and he's part of our logo, but he passed away in 2014, and we've been missing him very, very much. So we're excited and thrilled that this gentleman that raises them up in the Eastern Panhandle thought that we'd be a good home. So.
Does the one that's coming in have a name, or do you name them when they get here?
We name them when they get here. It just doesn't seem fair otherwise, you know.
Yeah.
You know, if you name it Fred and that's not right, it should be Rick or something. You know, it doesn't.
A lot of Freds out there thinking that should be Rick.
Right.
So is 20 plus years average for a lifespan for an owl?
Well, it varies on the species of owl. Okay, like the screech owls, they'll have a lifespan of about 10 to 12 years. A barn owl, you get about 20 or so in captivity.
Right.
And when you get over here to the barred owls, 24, 25 in captivity is really good. So, and that's what saying that we'll come over here to these guys.
How does that not remind you of Andy Alfredor?
Dobby doo. That is Robbie, and Robbie is a 25-year-old female barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D, and she is in with young Riffle, who is 4 years old. Riffle was found outside Elkview. He was hit by a vehicle when all those big floods came through. A rescue vehicle was going in and hit him. And it was his first several flights out. So the person behind him, scooped him up and then got him to us. But he had a dislocated elbow. So although he can fly a little bit, he can't hold the air. So he's with us. Robbie down here, you may notice that she has trouble keeping her head still, and that's been since she was a little one. She fell out of her den tree. These guys are both cavity dwellers. She fell out of her den tree, and she's just a chick, and some people tried to keep her as a pet. And she had a bad concussion, and her brain, of course, swelled up with the concussion and put pressure on the brain stem, and it resulted in permanent brain damage. So she has trouble, if she gets excited at all, she has real trouble keeping her head steady. She may also notice that she has cataract in one eye, and she's got the beginnings of one in the other, but she is almost non-sighted at this point. She's so old. She sees black and white, and she sees shapes, but we carefully don't mess with her cage very much, so she knows where everything is at all times.
And she's super vocal.
She is, and she always has been. And that's because she is a human imprint, because as her eyes focused again, just like with Hooley, she focused on people. They put her on the back porch and loved on her, and they fed her the right stuff, which was good, and enough of it, but they took good care of her, except for the fact that they imprinted her. And so she's always been very accepting of people and everything that happens around her, and she's always been very, very vocal.
When she's calling, is she communicating anything in particular, or is she just making noises?
Oh, they're definitely communicating, very much so. She's just sort of saying, I'm here, and she particularly responds to women's voices, so she'll talk more when women are talking, and if I'm out here, she really talks.
I guess it doesn't take too long to figure out the different personalities of all your birds. I mean, I would think they all have distinct personalities that you're able to pick up on pretty quick.
They sure do.
Yeah.
They sure do, just like you and I do.
Right.
And the other thing, we have a sort of a thing that we try to bring to people is like, they have bad days too. There's days they get up on the wrong side of the perch, and things don't go well that day, or they're cranky for this way, or it's a beautiful day and let's go do something, and so you're never quite sure. Just like with humans, you get down until the first cup of coffee, you see how you're doing.
I always think that when I'm driving and I see two horses in a field or two cows in a field, and people think, oh, they're best friends. I always wonder, what if they hate each other? You know, they've been in that field for 15 years and I
so
never
tired
have
of you.
liked you.
I'm so tired of you.
Well, it's been really interesting, bringing that up. It's really interesting to watch because, of course, we've had Robbie since she was just a few weeks old, and she's another one that was confiscated by the Division of Natural Resources Police. But, we weren't sure how it was going to work putting young Riffle in there with her, and, he was just a few months old when we put him in there with her. And he has been really protective of her and takes care of her, and, we're if we mess with something, he's like, okay, but I'll tell you something. Don't you mess with her now.
How old did you say he is now?
Riffle is now, I think, 4.
Okay.
We just got asked by Lady Maury Simpson, I think, how many birds do we currently have at the center?
Well, let me count.
Yeah.
We have our education ambassadors, so there's 12 of those. And we also have, right now we have 6 patients because we just released several. And we've got, 8 patients. Let's see, I keep losing track. So we got 8 patients in at the moment. And it's everything from nuthatches all the way up to great horned owls right now. It varies a lot. We've had so many birds that have been turned in this past week because it's baby season. And particularly the invasive species like starlings and sparrows, English sparrows, are really getting going, and they seem to have the worst luck getting out of the nest. So we've had a lot of birds that were turned in that just didn't make it. They're baby birds that some of them don't even have feathers; they just are fresh out of the egg, and they've already gotten cold and everything, and you can't do much with them.
How do you decide where to re-release them? Do you take them back to where they were found, or?
That's the point. Yeah, we try to. They're part of an ecosystem. And the only reason we won't do it is if it's a baby that has already bonded with another one that we know goes exactly over here, then we'll put them with that because it's better for that individual. Or if there's a problem, like we had one recently, a red-tailed hawk that was a trap injury, and which is illegal, but somebody trapped him. We were able to get him, fixed up, but we released him here in the New River Gorge, which was really not that far, many flaps to get to where he came from. But if he wanted to, he could just go home. But we sort of encouraged him to stay in a little safer area. The same thing if we have gunshot injuries, we try to relocate those as well.
And you take any bird then, not just raptors?
We do. We take anything from hummingbirds to eagles as long as it's non-game. So it has to be non-game. We don't work with geese. We don't work with most ducks. We're just not set up for it. No turkeys, no grouse,
That kind of stuff, yeah.
no.
Hummingbirds, wow.
Yeah.
Hummingbirds over the eagles, that's fascinating.
Yeah. We've had a couple turned in that were with broken wings that we were able to carefully line up and tape together and
That's
keep
wild.
them going. Yeah, it is, and they're so tiny, and if you blink, they're gone. But, it's really neat working with hummingbirds. But big challenge.
Little bird, big challenge.
Yeah.
You ever get non-indigenous birds that show up in some weird fashion?
Well, I've had calls for emus before, but we don't take them. Yeah, there was an emu that got loose around Oak Hill that they wanted us to come and rescue, and it's like, no. Your bird, your time. Here we have 2 members of the Buteo family, which are the soaring hawks. And the one on the right, I'm sorry, your left, will be Harlan. Harlan is a dark morph red-tailed hawk. He's missing the wing on this side because when he was first migrating through in 1998, on his very first migration, right through Monroe County, right past Hanging Rock Raptor Observatory, he was down at the bottom of the mountain and collided with a utility line. And it stretched out the nerves in the elbow, and it stuck the wing out straight in front of him. So we couldn't get it to go back and get into a comfortable position, and he was tripping over it. So we went ahead and were able to go ahead and amputate at the elbow, and he's with us for the rest of his life. But this is a surgery that we're no longer allowed to do. He's actually grandfathered in and he's a good example of why, because without that wing, he doesn't have his balance as well. And if he falls over, he can stay on his side for a while. So we have to be very, very careful with Harlan. And you may notice we have different setups as you come through the different cages, and it all has to do with their abilities or inabilities to make it so that they're safest. But he is a red-tailed hawk. Sometimes he'll turn around. There he shows his wing off. Thank you so much. He's having a good time enjoying this sunshine. But when we first got him, he did not have his adult tail. Red-tailed hawks only get their red tails when they're 2 years old. Up until that time, the tail is brown and black. And so when we got Harlan in, his tail was brown and black. One of the things that happens with red-tailed hawks is that there are 3 subspecies, one of which is called a Harlan's hawk, which is a dark brown bird like that, only the tail is usually sort of a muddy white color. So we weren't sure what we're going to get once he became an adult, whether he's going to be a true Harlan's hawk or a dark morph. And he didn't come in with the whitish tail, so but we named him Harlan anyway, so he's still Harlan. And beside him is Max. Max is a broad-winged hawk, and he's in the process of growing in a new tail. He has an unusual molting pattern. They're very antsy birds. Broad-winged hawks migrate all the way down some of them go all the way up to the top of Canada, but then they go all the way down to Guatemala, Brazil, and Peru. And then they come back up here in the springtime. Usually the peak of broad-wing migration in the fall is right around middle of September. And then they come back up in early April to mid-April in this area here. But they're very hoppy little birds. This is full-grown. This is a male. He weighs right around 13, 14 ounces. The females weigh a whopping 16 ounces. But and the females are about almost a third larger too. But he's working on getting his tail in right now. He actually comes to us from the northern part of the state, up past Morgantown. There's some folks that found him injured on their farm and tried to bind up his wing and nice going. Tried to bind up his broken wing themselves, and then when they took the wrap off, it didn't work. It wasn't lined up right. This is another case. If we'd gotten this bird when he was found, the X-ray showed that we could have pinned that surgically, and he would have healed up and been back out to do stuff. So he's with us for the rest of his life too.
And they get along fine?
They get along great. Max, actually, his name is Max. He used to be over where that empty cage is. And because we're now looking at getting a barn now, we wanted to make sure that this was going to work as a combo. And they have been so happy together. It's been great. So it's like, where have you been all my life? But broadwings are very social, extremely social. They migrate through in huge flocks. You'll see them come through sometimes in hundreds through West Virginia. And if you go up into the up there by Lake Superior, you'll see them come through sometimes in flocks of thousands and thousands and thousands at a time.
Huh.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What are the straps on their feet?
Those are called jesses, and those are just like a collar and leash on a dog. And that marks all of our education birds. So all our education birds have jesses on them.
Okay.
Broadwing hawks are woodland hawks. You're going to find them in areas just like we have mostly in the eastern part of the state particularly. You're not going to see them so much in the farmlands. But they eat a lot of small rodents, again. But they also go after small snakes and lizards as well. And here we have Dory.
Oh.
And Dory is a peregrine falcon. This is a male. And, hey, Dory. Dory actually comes to us from the New River Gorge Bridge. Three Rivers Avian Center was we count ourselves very fortunate. We got tapped to help with the peregrine restoration project in the New River Gorge between 2006 to 2011. And we were asked to actually run it from 2008 through 2011. In the period of 2006 to 2011, we actually released 124 young peregrine falcons into the New River Gorge. The idea was to try to repopulate peregrine falcons in southern Appalachia, in the southeastern part of West Virginia and over into Virginia. And so we we succeeded in doing that beautifully. We ended up stopping in 2011 because we hit saturation point. So it was time for us to just sort of lay back and see what they did. And one of our males from that project went over to the New River Gorge Bridge and established a nest site there that's going on very well. If you take the New River Gorge Bridge walk, you'll be shown where the nest is. You can't get anywhere close to it. You know, physically there's no way. And so it's a very safe spot. But young Dory was one of the ones out of that nest, and he was learning how to fly and do things, and the next thing you know, he collided with something. We're not sure whether it was the car going across the bridge or, you know, one of the girders or what happened. And he ended up found underneath the New River Gorge Bridge with a dislocated elbow. So he's with us for the rest of his life. He'll live to be somewhere between 16 to 20 years old, captivity.
And am I just making this up, or aren't peregrine falcons the fastest animal?
They are. They're the fastest animal on the planet. The U.S. Air Force has clocked one coming out of a dive at 263 miles an hour. And just to put that in perspective, a human being passes out at 90.
Wow.
Yeah, they are built for it. If you look into the nostrils of any of the falcons, but particularly the peregrines, they have a little spiral built in there. And if you look at the front of a jet engine, it's the same thing. And what that does is there's so much the air industry has learned from birds, right? You know,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, this little curled up area thing, this corkscrew, actually slows the air down as they're coming into a dive like that, so it doesn't blow them apart.
That's
Yeah. Yeah. Now they used to have the name duck hawk, and because that is one of their favorite foods. They also go after quail. They got small birds. You know, they'll go after. We discovered a lot of chipmunks in the process. When we were releasing them into the New River Gorge, it's actually a project called a HACK, H-A-C-K, and what that is you get the young birds before they can fly. They're old enough to feed on their own, but they're not old enough to fly yet. The feathers haven't come in all the way. And we got those young chicks we got them from Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia, and brought them into the New River Gorge, and they were put into these specially made boxes, and you'll see one of them over there. Oh, that's called a hack box. That's a very fancy hack box. Ours were not that nice. But they were then set on the cliffs at the New River Gorge, and we would feed them through a special feeding tube that, would throw their food down a chute into their cage and walk away so they never see who fed them. And as they grew, they were out looking out at the gorge and looking at each other in the cage. And then when they got old enough to start to fly, then what we would do is we had an elaborate rig set up to go ahead and open the door kind of via a series of strings and pulleys. And we'd be watching from a blind, and they'd come out and eat we were feeding quail because that's very close to what they would be catching out in the wild, some sort of bird. And they would come out, eat some quail, get up and on various things and sit and watch, and okay, let's go. And they'd start, booming around, and it was very interesting. Because, here we take care of a lot of injured wild birds, right? Now we're letting these youngsters out, and they've got the keys to the Ferrari and no driving instructions, right? So they're allowed to go out and fly, right? So they get out, and they're going out, and they're flying like crazy, and they've never done it before, and they're screaming their full heads off. It's very loud. Scream, 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 scream. And then they sort of get, okay, now I'm up in the air. I'm doing okay. Well, sooner or later, they got to come down and land, and they've never done that either. and they will land, and sometimes they miss the branch, and then they just ping pong down out of the tree, and there's no way to get from here to there to catch them in time, and you just have to but they're back up again, off and going. So it was quite an interesting time of it. We ran that program. Usually started in early May, and then would go until usually right toward the mid to late July, and you'd see the light shift. As you're getting close to equinox, and they would, it was just like the songbirds would shut up. You'd notice they were disappearing like crazy, and suddenly the peregrines weren't there. Just as soon as the light started to change, that was the key. Yeah, it's really neat. But Dory didn't get to do that. But he gets to go out and see people, and he really likes it. He's a very social little guy.
Seems like it way over there in his corner.
Yeah, I know.
Smart,
Hi,
it can
it
be.
is. No, don't look at me. And this is Ryan. Ryan is what a red-tailed hawk normally looks like around here. You can see he's got the belly band across. He's got a creamy front. Again, this is another wing injury that we could not get to where he could go out and fly again. He can partially fly. He can get from there to this perch, but he can't get all the way. We've had him since he was a year old. He's now 4 years old now. Red-tailed hawks are generalists, just like great horned owls are. You know, they take everything from small stuff all the way up to big stuff. Their favorite foods are rabbits, snakes, and squirrels. And falconers, when they will fly red-tailed hawks, when they're catching them first, you know, to get them to train, they usually catch them out of the wild their first year. And they look for a hawk that has a little nub right above the talon on the toe, because that's usually where the squirrels get, you know, try to defend themselves as they're becoming food, and will bite right at the beginning of the talon. So they know that hawk knows how to hunt, and they know that hawk likes squirrels, and they, you know, so that you can send him out for dinner, you know.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah. He'll live to be about 25 or so. We had Nick, our old red tail, lived to be 28.
Was he there? Was he in that box?
No, he likes that one.
Oh.
That seems to be the preferred nest of the two of them. But we also have in here a vulture that we are working on becoming an education ambassador. And they share this space really well. He's not out on display right now because he is still pending permission from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So Atticus is in the room for right now. He's there. You can wave at him, but he's not there right now.
Atticus vulture, not to be confused with Atticus finch.
Right.
That's right. Atticus vulture. I think Alicia has Gimli here. Buddy.
Yeah, he is pretty. He knows it.
Oh, he does. He really does.
That's so pretty.
Wow.
Gimli is an American kestrel. They're the smallest falcon as a species, the smallest raptor as a species in North America. And this is full grown. This is as big as they get. He weighs 4 ounces, quarter pounder, no lettuce, no cheese, no tomato.
Some sass.
It's a lot of sass. A lot of sass.
That's the secret sauce, right?
And we've had him now, I guess he's 6 years old now. It's one of the few times you can look at a bird of prey and tell if it's male or female by its feathers. You can see he's got blue on his wings. He's got a solid chestnut tail with one white band at the bottom. And if he spreads his wings out, his tail out, you'll see that he has a white feather here and a white feather here. They're very showy. And he spreads it all out. That tells you it's a male. If it was female, instead of that, you would have brown and black bars across of the wings and the back and all the way down the tail. So it's, yep, whoop, whoop, whoop. Careful now.
So I know that, like for songbirds, generally the males are more colorful because they're like trying to attract the female. Is that the same thing for these guys, or are they colored differently for different reasons?
That's as good a theory as any. Okay. As far as we know, it's you know, that's just the way they are. One of the things that they've been discovering in the last 10 years or so, they've been watching. They've been looking at how vision works with birds a lot, and there's also with bees and other pollinators. And they're finding out that not only do they see the light spectrum that we see, but they see much more of the light spectrum than we see. American kestrels are actually one of the first ones they tested. And the reason is American kestrels, you know, we talked about the peregrine falcon diving out of the sky at 263 miles an hour, right? Yeah. Well, kestrels don't do that. They have a very different way of hunting. They actually get up on something like maybe a light post or a power line or something up high over a short grass area like we have here, and they'll sort of sit there and watch, and then they'll jump off and sort of hover, you know, maybe 10 feet off the ground, 6 feet off the ground, and then they dive from a short distance. So it's a very unique way, and of course it takes a lot of energy to do that. So they were wondering, you know, how do they know where to jump, or how do you You don't just sit there and hover for no particular reason. There's got to be something there. So they started watching what they were getting, and when they were doing this hovering mechanism, they're usually doing it right over top of a small rodent of some kind, usually a shrew, mole, or vole, or something like that. And it turns out that those small rodents don't see very well. And so when they come up out of their barrows or grassy areas, and as they run along, they leave little drops of urine along the ground as they go. It's a scent trail. Yeah. So when they want to come back, they just turn around and put their noses to the ground. Okay, lovely thought, isn't it? It's first thing in the morning. All right. And so what they was like, okay, well that's interesting. But then they started, they got an aha moment, and they tested it, and sure enough, those urine trails show up on the ultraviolet scale of light. Wow. And then they turned around and they tested American kestrels, and don't you know that they see on the ultraviolet scale of light. So they're literally up high seeing 6 trails there, 20 there, bunches over there.
Wow.
They're hunting by using a color that we can't see.
Mm-hmm. You can see it if you have one of those purple lights, a black light. So just imagine their whole world is like a black light poster.
Yeah.
Wow.
You know, what
trails going right to food. It's like a neon sign saying, diners open, right?
Yeah.
And what brought this guy here?
He's a human imprint. From what we've been able to gather, his nest box was destroyed, and some people found it when he was just a little chick, and decided to raise him up like on my side of the mountain, the book. Mm-hmm. And of course, a story is a story, but sometimes people forget that. Mm-hmm. And so they took him home and raised him up, and they did great. He was in great condition when they let him go on the state capitol state capitol grounds right there. And this was 6 years ago at the end of April. But he was a human imprint. All he knew was to go to humans for food. So this was late Sunday night late Sunday afternoon when they let him go. Well, Monday morning, comes time for everybody to go into the Capitol and do their work, and they're shuffling in with their coffee and whatever else.
He's hungry.
And he's hungry, so he starts landing on people.
Oh, wow.
So our phone started ringing about 5 minutes after 8, And we were hoping there was just a young bird that had been gotten accustomed to being around people. If we just let him alone for a day or so, he'd be all right. But that didn't happen. By the next day, he was even more hungry. Now he was biting people. And since there was blood involved, we decided it was time to step in. And so he's been with us ever since. But again, you notice how vocal he is.
Yeah. Now, is human imprinting always a bad thing, or is there any good to it?
If you have a pet bird, it's a good thing. A wild bird is a bad thing.
Gotcha.
All right. Makes sense. Imprinting only happens when the chick's eyes are beginning to focus. Okay? It doesn't happen once they're an adult, or even once they get past that stage. It's a mechanism to get them to understand who to pay attention to, what food to eat, what the social mores are, all that sort of stuff. But once they've got that established, that usually happens in just the first less than a month, usually first couple of weeks. Once that's established, then they know who they are, but they can be tamed, okay, like Ryan is tamed or Harlan is tamed, okay. They can accept and decide to move their mailing address, but if you can reverse a taming situation, you can't reverse an imprint situation. That's for life. Yeah, I know. Somebody flew over, didn't they? They don't like it. He really doesn't like to be outside without cover over top very much. Evidently, it was pretty traumatic over there at the Capitol those few days. We did. If you've been over at the state Capitol grounds, you can do some pretty good raptor watching over there. We've seen red-tailed hawks, red-shouldered hawks, Cooper's hawks, sharp-shinned hawks, and American kestrels actually have a nest somewhere in the dome. Oh, wow. And they also have some nesting kestrels across the river at the University of Charleston. So it's great habitat for American kestrels. Pinky's telling you all about it.
Yeah,
It was terrible.
I worked at the Culture Center for a while, and everybody loved the squirrels on the grounds. And then one day a red-tailed hawk moved in and started to work on the squirrel population.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, the two factions, because one was like, well, that's what that bird does, and the other was like, let the squirrels live. So.
And it goes on to this day.
The bird won.
Yeah. Well, we actually, for a while there was a hawk that people dubbed the Capitol hawk, which was, I just listed how many hawks are out there, right? But there was one that was a Cooper's hawk that was chasing another bird and collided with one of those clear barriers to the Veterans Memorial. Oh, yeah. And fortunately they had the moat drained at that point, and he collided pretty hard and knocked himself out. And the humane officer came, picked him up, and got him to one of our intake points in Charleston. And so he healed up. He just had a concussion. He just needed a little bit of time to get over it. And then, he was doing what he was supposed to do. There's nothing really to say, don't put him back here. So, we wanted to put him back where he came from. You should have heard the controversy before we even got a chance to think about that. And so we decided that the simplest thing to do was to take him up to Coonskin Park, which if you look at the map is like 4 wing flaps away from But we didn't release him where he came from, exactly. And but they still talk about the Capitol hawk, and then they'll show us pictures of just about every other species, except
Now you said that the kestrels had have a nest in the dome, but for a year or more, the dome was covered with that plastic wrap. Did they?
They're further down.
Oh, okay.
They're further down.
Good thinking, birds.
Yeah, really. Bird brain does not equal stupid. We're going to have a T-shirt made.
We have a few questions also about where we're located, how we're funded, different things like that.
Hey, Lisha, I'm going to need keys for Regis's cage, if you don't mind. Thank you. Okay, where we're located. We're located in the southern part of the New River Gorge National Park and Preserve. We have about 100 acres here of woodlands, like you see here. It's on top of a mountain in between Hinton and Sandstone, Summers County. And what else do we have there?
How we're funded, and then also if there's other avian centers in the state.
Okay. We are funded through private donations. People like you step up to the plate and help make this place work. That's our primary source of funding. Once in a while, we get lucky and get a grant. We do not get federal funding. Once in a great while, like for the migration celebration, we do get a grant for that. But the rest of the time, no. So it's our educational programs and our memberships and donations. So your donation counts. And if you would like to make a donation, we would really appreciate it. You can go to our website. We just use the initials for Three Rivers Avian Center, TRACWV.org. And you'll find a donate button right there on the front page. We appreciate any help you can give us. There are a couple of other centers in the state. The Avian Conservation Center of Appalachia is up at Cheat Lake, and they take in all kinds of wild birds. And then there's the West Virginia Raptor Rehabilitation Center, which is just outside Morgantown, and they take in raptors only.
Awesome.
Do we get it?
Yeah, definitely. We've had people commenting from all over the place. There's a woman channeling in from France, actually.
Oh, wow. Hi. Across the pond. I don't know, we might have to say you're international now. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Alicia.
And Connie, she's one of the people that asked the question. She said, thank you for answering.
Oh, good. Hey,
right.
Regis. Hey, buddy. You guys can come up to the cage if you want.
We were in Nova Scotia, and I swear we saw a bald eagle as big as Paula. It was on top of a rock, and it was just, I thought it was a rock formation when I saw it.
Did you?
And then she's like, that's an eagle. And I'm like, there's no way, it's giant. It was nearly as big as she was. It seemed like.
Well, you're probably, yeah, the wingspan, this is a male. Males are about a third smaller than the females.
Huh.
It probably was, yeah. Yep.
We were hiking and we kind of came around the corner and the eagle was on the outcropping of rock. It felt like we were only like 2 feet away because it was sudden. I know we but you just went whoop, like it was amazing.
And you have to step back on that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand completely. It's funny you should say it that way because the first time I saw a bald eagle in the wild was on a birding trip with some friends that I just met. And it was like, we went out for 2 nights, going all over up into the Upper Peninsula and stuff in the winter.
Like you do.
Like you do, yeah. Because, who wants, what was it, 10 degrees, 20 degrees below zero, and we're out there at midnight looking for a boreal owl.
Warmer than today.
But we got over into Ohio, and we were going up past a rest stop and pulled in, and of course the front car is just like, and we're all, there's a bald eagle right there. And I was like, that's a wad in the tree. But, and so we have a running joke, just look for the wad in the tree. But this is Regis, and Regis is a male bald eagle. And one of the questions we frequently get is, everybody can see he's got feathers on his head. Excuse me. And the reason they're called bald eagles is because our language has changed. When they were named in the 1700s, the word bald meant white-headed. And it's changed now to where it means nothing on top. So, yeah. Bald eagles are really interesting in that they have a way, during the first 5 years, you can tell exactly how old a bald eagle is. Well, close to it, how close a bald eagle is. When they first hatch out, they are a pretty little white fuzzball that within about 2 weeks turns sort of a sooty dark brown. It blends into the nest. And they stay that sooty dark brown color all the time through their whole first year. There's no white on them at all. Their eyes are dark, the beak is dark, everything is dark. When they get to be 2 years old, you start to see some white blotches moving around on the wings or around the body, but the head is still dark, the tail is still dark. When they get to be 3 years old, they start to have some very fine white streaks start to show up in the head. You start to see some white blotches on the tail. When they get to be 4 years old, they have an almost white head, but they have a very noticeable horizontal eye stripe. And the tail is almost white. When they get to be 5 to 6 years old, that's when you get the full white head and tail.
Well, here he comes.
Regis was hatched in 2008.
We also,
Attaboy!
we also had a question about how much Regis would weigh.
Regis weighs 10 pounds. A female can weigh about 13. And if he could extend both wings all the way, he'd have about a 6-foot wingspan. But you may notice that one wing doesn't extend. He was found down in the southern part of North Carolina with a badly broken wing that he healed wrong. And it was in the wild, and he was just starving to death when somebody discovered him. And they were able to scoop him up and get him in. But there was no way to fix the wing without losing it. Right? Yeah.
Is it possible to put him on a glove, or is he too big for that?
Oh, I take him out all the time. Yeah, he's my bird.
Does he just need this much more room, or is he lucky?
He uses it all. Yeah, all of our birds have indoor-outdoor runs, and his is, of course, a little bit bigger because he is a bigger bird. It is larger than is minimally required, but we had the space and we had the money, and yeah, right. This was one of the this was a fundraising nightmare because we had people that were willing to donate money to build the cage if we had permission to keep the eagle. Fish and Wildlife Service wouldn't give us permission to keep the eagle unless we had the cage.
Yeah.
So it kept rolling there for a while, and we were on, chewing our fingernails off, but we got it built, and Fish and Wildlife said okay, and we're just under deadline before our application went into the trash can. So.
And the bald eagles are really making a comeback in this area, right?
They sure are. They sure are. We are part of a monitoring system through southern West Virginia. We jokingly call ourselves the Southern West Virginia Eagle Brigade. But we're monitoring nests.
Oh, man.
Hi, buddy. Show off. Yeah. Tell us all about it.
Got a little snack stashed over there.
Yeah, he's got a little bit of breakfast over there. But, yeah, it was a white rat this morning.
Yeah, we saw two down, on the Kanawha River, north of, or south
Marmot
of,
area?
yeah, Marmot,
Yeah, there's a nest over near Marmot, too.
wherever London, where those locks are right there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there's a nest over there that's active. And the first documented nesting pair of bald eagles was in 88 in the Moorfield area. And they've gradually spread on their own throughout the state. We didn't used to have bald eagles. We didn't have the habitat here in the state until we started building dams in the 1940s and 50s, which allowed us to then have large fish and waterfowl, which is what the bulk of their diet. So once we started building dams, we had the habitat, had the food, but then we started using DDT, and the whole populations all crashed. And gradually they've been coming back. So, like I said, they started in the early 80s here in West Virginia, and we got them here in the New River Gorge in 1993, I think was our first sighting here at the Bluestone Dam. And it was another one of those things that, yeah, I know what you're talking about, because we got called, be careful yourself, we got called to help document that, because when you're going out birding and you see a new species that's not usually there, you need somebody there to verify that knows what they're talking about. You know, it's just a what you do, you know. And so we got called to come on out and look, you know. So we spent like hours looking for this eagle, you know. Just like, we know the birder, you know. We know that it's going to be there. Jim Phillips, we knew it was going to be there somewhere, but the bird wasn't being helpful. Finally, it's getting close to dark, and it's almost 5 o'clock, and so we're driving down Route 20, and we just passed the dam, and here came the eagle right over top of us. And it's like, yep, check.
They're here.
And it was so huge. It just seemed, you know, because we weren't expecting it. We just come around a corner, and yeah, it looked like it covered the entire, you know, distance of the road, but they really only have, female has about a 6.5 to 7 foot wingspan at the most, so. But it was big. It was so big.
Well, you're not expecting it. That 6.5 feet looks really big.
Really big. And we do have another eagle in West Virginia. It's called the golden eagle. And they're slightly bigger than the bald eagle, but you have to put them side by side to see it. But the golden eagle is brown all over, sort of the same dark color that Harlan, the dark morph red tail, except they had this beautiful sort of tawny golden wash that starts at the top of the head and goes down to the shoulders. And that's where the name comes from.
Is the golden eagle the one that has the call that people think is the bald eagle, or is that a different one?
Well, let me answer that a little differently.
You know what I mean.
It's a perfect question, and we do answer this on a regular basis. If you for those of you that are watching this, if you've ever seen a documentary or a nature program, and it's usually some helicopter plane view or whatever, you're coming in over the trees, and you look down, you see this beautiful bald eagle flying along, you hear this tremendous, wonderful regal cry. That's not a bald eagle. You heard what a bald eagle sounds like, right? Well, it's the same red-tailed hawk cry for bald eagles. Yeah, whoever recorded that has made a mint. It's the same one every time. But if you get close to a red tail, when they're making that, it's a territorial call, and you know, pay attention call. If you get close to that, there's a growl that sounds like a bear. And if I was like from me to you, I would be able to hear it. But small animals and stuff also can hear because they have better hearing. But yeah, it's quite something to hear. No wonder everybody like freezes or runs. You know?
If I had a bird growl at me,
yeah, exactly. So what did we decide on the video?
Is there an estimation of how many bald eagles are in West Virginia now?
We know that we have over 120 active nests in the state of West Virginia. This year seems to be a really good year for the nests. We're looking at so many nests now that we're monitoring that have 3, which is unusual. Usually we get 2 is the average.
Two chicks.
2 chicks. I'm sorry, yeah, 2 chicks, and yeah, so that's on average, but it can be, you know, 3 if it's a really good food season. Once in a blue moon, 4 has been documented, but you almost never see that. So, but this year we've got so many nests that have 3 chicks. And it's like, oh boy, good year. You know, I kind of wonder, just, you know, as an anecdote, wondering, you know, last year was such a prolific year in a lot of ways. We had a lot of rodents, we had a lot of this, that, and the other, but particularly cicadas. And we had a ton of cicadas. So the woodpeckers and everybody else went crazy, and even a lot of the animals were eating wood. You know, we actually had a bear that came through. We have bears on this mountain, hooray! You know, and we were watching through the window, and the big old female, and she's just sort of wandering along last summer, and she just sort of just lapping them up out of the grass, you know, as she came along, and then she's lapping them up off a tree, and she just sort of lay down and digested for a little while. And then she sort of wandered down the hill and went over here and lay down. It's like, the food was good.
It was good.
Food be good.
Just one more. Just one more.
Yeah. that one right there. Oh, that was it.
I gotta take a nap now.
My tummy.
When there's that many hatching, do you prepare to get more in here? I mean, it just
We're ready for it. Yeah. We have actually much more capacity than we usually use. So we've had, at one point, we had in-house, we had 30 black vultures. Wow. At one point when people were, there was a person that got mad at them being down at Bluestone Lake and decided to try to poison the whole flock. And that was a major flock that was down there. And yeah, it was bad. It was really bad.
Some people are wanting to get a close-up of Regis. Can I walk over there? Is that okay?
You can go to the sycamore tree, but you can't go around the edge.
All right, sounds good. And also, before I do that, actually, Laura Wagner asked if do bald eagles have any natural predators?
Great horned owls. Huh. Yeah, the chicks are vulnerable to great horned owls.
Okay.
Everything's vulnerable to a great horned owl. Yeah.
All right.
But as far as the adults, primarily they don't really have any natural predators.
They don't. The biggest problem that we have with bald eagles is humans, and we've seen gunshot ones here. Believe it or not, we've seen a lot of lead toxicity, and that just people ask where we get it from, so we actually have a full page on our website. And you can go to it. If you go to our website, tracwv.org, you will find right on the front page a link that'll take you right over to the lead poisoning in birds page that we have put together specifically for this. In testing that's been done throughout the country, including work that's been done by WVU, and we've participated in that, collecting data for them. The cause of lead poisoning that we're seeing over and over and over again is coming from lead ammunition. That's the number one source. And if we're not anti-hunting. I mean, we hunt for the birds. If I've got an eagle or somebody that, or whatever needs a fresh rabbit or a squirrel or something, sure, that's what we do. Their job is to heal them up and get them back out. But if people are using lead ammunition, the way a lot of people have been trained to do it. Hi! Going back through. I'll get out of your way. There you go.
Sorry, I'll go get a close-up of Regis right quick.
He would like you to do that.
Yeah.
Look, I will be very pretty. Get up on your perch. Why don't you get up on your perch, buddy? Go on. Up you go. Hurry up. No. No, I think I'm going to run the other end of the cage. But people will shoot something with a lead bullet, and then they typically will cut out where the bullet went through, and they may actually what they call field dress the thing where they actually will cut it open and take all the guts out and leave that there. Well, they'll also leave that piece that had the bullet in it, and we actually have a video on our Facebook page that was done by a large animal hunter. It was actually out west, but it holds true. So he shot a wild boar with a high-power rifle right through the neck and went straight through the neck. Gone. Boar down, dead. They ran over without moving it, took a portable x-ray unit and shot a picture of it. And you can see the lead fragments that go from end to end on that x-ray unit. It literally goes from right above where the bullet went in all the way down below the ribs and into the torso. When a lead hits a body, it pushes a little bit of air in front of it, and as it goes through the body, the bullet itself starts to shatter. Okay, so you never get an intact bullet coming out the other end. There's always little bits left behind, and some of it can be so small you don't even see it, but it will show up on x-ray. Lead is a neurotoxin. Okay, small amounts can kill. Something less than the size of an eraser is enough to kill a bald eagle. Wow. So, if you know anybody that's going out hunting, please encourage them to switch over to non-lead ammunition. You can find it online if you can't find it from your local stores. And then also encourage your local stores to start carrying it. It's really important for everybody. I also hear from some folks that, well, we've been shooting lead for so long, it's already out in the environment, it doesn't matter what I do. And that's not true. It matters to that bird that just got, your bullet. Caused that, or your lead sinker is another problem. We see a lot of that problem too.
Also, a copper bullet is in no way less efficient or less accurate than a lead bullet.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
you're not losing anything by switching out.
Nope. It's sometimes even a little bit better. So yeah, and the cost has actually come down to where it's almost exactly the same.
Right.
So yeah, it's a good point. Good point.
We had a question, and they were wondering how long you've been a birder, because you are a wealth of knowledge.
Well, when I started doing this back in '88, I knew the difference between a robin and a blue jay. So, not really high on the birder list, and I'm still there. I'm way outclassed by many, many, many others. So, but thank you for the compliment. Alrighty, shall we go back this way a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a video. We were planning to do it through a different program, but that one was very choppy, so we switched over to the phone. We are planning to just kind of pull up the video up on the laptop and kind of get that going. Do you want to talk about what the video is about, like the intro?
Sure. Let me get down the hill here a little
Yeah,
bit.
we'll just walk on down. Go get a quick close-up of Regis, too, for you guys. All right.
Oh, you're doing it. You guys are doing great. It's so much easier when you know we have people.
Yes,
You know, it's really hard.
Trust me, I know.
Do what?
Having people is
Yeah,
much
yeah.
easier.
even four, like
Yeah.
six.
Yeah, it's a
Just
big
talking to
difference.
that screen, and I mean, you know there are people on the other side of it.
Yeah, you don't get the feedback, and it's hard.
So are there other birds in there?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. Yes, that we didn't cover over there. That is what we call our flight barn, and then behind it there's some other flight cages for songbirds as well. But the flight barn is a unique structure. It's actually an oval. You see that there's a raised section in the center that has two 20 by 20 foot rooms plus one 20 by 40 foot room. And the top of it is open to the sky just with mesh like we have here. So the birds can get in and out of the weather if they want to. They have room to expand and fly and build up their stamina. And when they get through that, and that's like right after they come out of one of the hospital wards, they'll go into the flight barn. And then from there, they'll go into what we call the flyway, the continual flyway. And that is this lower section that you'll see here. And that's 63 feet long if you measure it from one end to the other, but it's continual, 12 feet high, and they can maneuver and fly and get their strength back up all the way before they go out.
And there's just a bunch of different species in there just hanging out?
Well, we you have to be careful. So right now we have a screech owl in a 20 by 20 room, and we have a sharp-shinned hawk in the other 20 by 20 room. And the sharp-shin is just about ready to go out. So she's going to graduate over to the 20 by 40 this week, and once everything clears up, she's ready to go.
Nice.
So there's not just a whole bunch of birds in there? There's
No.
Okay.
No. That's the last stage of rehab before they go out.
Okay.
So we've had, gosh, how many have we had in there? We've had about 10 birds in there, in that whole conglomeration. Depending upon who's and which ones. You don't ever want to put predator and prey together, obviously.
Yeah, that was what I was going to ask. I assume you have your raptors and your songbirds and different.
We do. Usually we don't
places.
put songbirds in there unless it's a bigger bird.
Okay.
But we have songbird flight cages behind that that you can't see at all because it's all gotten green. But the songbird flight cage is 8 by 16 by 8 high. And we're going to be building another one as soon as the lumber prices come back down again. We got donations to put together a Zach Steenstra Memorial fly cage. So we're, show off.
So you were saying about the kestrel, how he didn't like to have like open air above him for too long. Is he fine in those cages, like with the mesh up top, or does he prefer like being actually like indoors?
No, he's fine with this. He wants
Okay.
protection. And his cage and Huli's cage are not down here. They are such heavy imprints, human imprints, that if we put either of them down here, we've tried it before, and they just beat themselves up. So we built indoor-outdoor runs for them up near the house, and
Okay.
so they are
So they
there.
see people.
They see people.
Yeah.
And they interact with people, and things are much better. They don't beat themselves up.
So they know that they can't be attacked from above when they're under that mesh?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I figure like if they can't get out, they would assume that other things can't get in.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you, Internet world who's watching. This is the first full house audience I have had in more than a year, so this is very exciting to actually fill all of the seats. Don't show those two empty seats. My name is Bill Lepp, for those of you that don't know, and I am 5-time champion of the West Virginia Liars Contest, which is a storytelling contest held in Charleston, West Virginia every year as part of the Vandalia Gathering, just to kind of help perpetuate the art of storytelling in West Virginia. I've been a full-time storyteller since about 2003. This has been my full-time job, traveling all around the country telling stories, and thank you guys very much for including me today. Now, I grew up in a little tiny town called Half Dollar, West Virginia. In Half Dollar, we had 2 streets. One was called Main Street, and the other one, I'm pretty sure, was called, nah, that ain't Main Street. And we had a Methodist church, and then sort of a, your sort of variety pack of Baptist churches. And our parents told us there was a Catholic church over the hill, but we didn't know if that was true, or if that was just something they told us so we'd go to sleep at night. But my buddy Skeeter and I loved the Half Dollar Baptist Church. Now, when I say we loved the Baptist Church, I mean we loved the building that was the Baptist Church, because we were Methodists. And the reason we loved the Baptist Church is because the attic was infested with bats. And I just want to say right now, for the record, I understand that bats are not birds. Okay. But they do fly. And this is the closest avian story that I have. So we're just going to go with bats. The attic was infested with bats. And on a spring evening, a summer evening, a fall evening, you could go and sit behind the church and just watch thousands and thousands of bats flying out of the eaves, flying out of the steeple. It was a beautiful sight to see. So Skeeter and I were very excited when it was announced that because they were doing renovations at the Methodist church, that we were going to have a joint vacation Bible school at the Baptist church. And we were excited for several reasons. One, we had lots of Baptist friends. But it was difficult to tell the Baptist children from the Methodist children on the playground because we all knew the same bad words. So we were very excited to have the opportunity to see the Baptist children being Baptist in their natural Baptist habitat. On top of that, we had never been in the Baptist church before, but we understood that in the Baptist church they had a baptismal, like a big bathtub where they did the baptisms. Because, when you're a Methodist, when you get baptized, you just get a little bit of water sprinkled on your head. But the Baptists get the full bore dunking. And I asked my dad why that was, and he said that's because Methodists just have dirty minds, but that the Baptists are dirty all over. And then, there go those donations. And then, when you're a Methodist, of course, you get baptized as an infant. Usually, you don't really have much to do with it. But and there's no rebaptism in the Methodist Church. But we understood that there were Baptists who got baptized like once a week. So we thought maybe we'd have the opportunity to see that. So we were so excited to get to the church. We got there on the first day of the Vacation Bible School, and there was a devotional, and then we sang some hymns, and right away you could tell the difference between the Methodist and the Baptist kids, because the Baptist kids knew the words, and the Methodists were looking for the hymnals. And then it came time to do the offering. And instead of passing the plates in the traditional fashion, what happened was we got up, and the boys lined up against this wall, and the girls lined up against this wall, and we progressed forward. And someone had built in front of the altar an offering giving device, the likes of which I had never seen before and have never seen again. It was a 2x4 about 3 feet tall, and then bolted loosely perpendicularly across that was another 2x4. And on this side, tied on by binder's twine, was a coffee can painted blue. And on this side, tied on by binder's twine, was a coffee can painted pink. And the boys put their money in the blue can, and the girls put their money in the pink can, and whichever side went down, that gender won the offering. Now, there is a lot wrong with that, and it's not even all theological. I mean, part of the problem is that the value of American money has very little to do with the weight of American money. A nickel is twice the size of a dime, but it only weighs half as much. At 10 pennies weighs more than a $100 bill. My buddy Skeeter and I knew that firsthand because that winter there'd been a blizzard. And we decided that we were going to go out and shovel some snow to make a little bit of extra money. Now, I have to tell you that I am the last of 5 children, which means I did not own a new article of clothing until I was probably 27 years old. And the worst part about that was that my 2 closest siblings were my sisters. And so I would say to my mother, I don't want to wear a girl's pants. I don't want to wear a girl's shirt. And my mother would say, there's no such thing as girl's pants. There's no such thing as a girl's shirt. And I would say, then how come my shirt sticks out right here? And she would say, be quiet. There are children in Biafra. And so I was born, like about half of you, after the inventions of rubber and wool, but before the inventions of Thinsulate and Gore-Tex. So my winter boots were essentially rubber rain boots with metal clasps so that you could tighten them. And they were one size fits all, which means my oldest brother. So by the time they got to me, they had 4 siblings worth of holes worn through the soles and burned through the uppers. So to render them winter-proof, what my mother would do is sit me down, put 2 wool socks on each foot, and then take space age, state-of-the-art, Arctic-rated Wonder Bread bags. She would put 2 bread bags on each leg, each foot, and then work a rubber band up my calf and slap that shut. So that within about 15 minutes, my feet were numb. And I didn't know if it was frostbite or lack of circulation, but they weren't cold, so it didn't matter. And another complication with having not trash bags, but bread bags on your feet is I had on these rubber boots that were too big, so walking was quite a process because I'd pick up my foot, but it would take a second or two for my foot to fully engage the boot. Then I would lift the boot, put it back down, and then my foot would have to re-engage the boot. So, thusly clad, Skeeter and I headed out. And again, this was a long time ago. This was the 1970s. So safety hadn't really been invented yet. And my mother was like, goodbye, boys. Go. Knock on strangers' doors. If they invite you in, by all means, enter their houses. If they offer you food and drink, say please and thank you. See you when you get home. Or not. You're the last of 5 children. We might not notice for a while. So we headed out. And this immediately turned from not just an exercise and occupation, but also sort of a sociology experiment. Because Skeeter and I would knock on a door, and if the man of the house opened the door, we would say, can we shovel your driveway? And he would say, how much? And we would say, $5. And he would say, have at it. But if the woman of the house opened the door, we would say, can we shovel your driveway? And she would say, oh, no, my husband is going to do that. And we would walk away. And about 30 seconds later, the door would open. And there would be the man of the house saying, boys, 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 come back, come back. So we learned that if the woman shut the door, we would just stay on the stoop. And 30 seconds later, the door would open. And there would be the man of the house. But he wouldn't see us because he was looking down the street and we were only this tall. And when he couldn't locate us, we would learn a new word. And then we would make some sort of noise, and that would startle him, and we would learn another new word. So by the end of the day, Skeeter and I each probably had $25, $30 cash money in our pockets. And the last house we did was a little old lady who, when we were done, she invited us in and she gave us cookies and cocoa. And then she paid us each $5, but she paid us in pennies. So we had to sit there, count out 500 pennies apiece. And the only vessel I had large enough to carry 500 pennies was a Wonder Bread bag. And if you're interested, I can tell you that you can make it about 1/8 of a mile with 500 pennies in a Wonder Bread bag before the Wonder Bread bag just gives up. But Skeeter had been smart enough to separate his pennies into two 250 penny piles and then double bag them, so he made it home. All of that to say, Skeeter and I were well aware that the weight of American money has very little to do with the value of American money. So back to the Vacation Bible School. What Skeeter and I wanted to do most was to get in the baptismal. And I don't know why, except that we were 7, and it seemed like the thing to do. So anytime we could sneak away from class, the sanctuary was empty, Skeeter and I would go, and first we would just look into the baptismal. I don't know exactly what we thought we were going to see. I guess we thought we'd see Baptist sin, just sort of swimming around like koi, you know. Oh, there goes lust, there goes avarice. And then we'd be just about to get into the baptismal when the Baptist preacher would appear behind us. Now, it was a small town. We didn't go to that church, but it was a small town. Everybody knew everybody. And he was this gruff old guy. And I say he was old, but now I realize that he was probably 30. And he had this really wonderful attitude about him. He really didn't care whether or not you believed or agreed with him, because he knew that he was right. And that you would either one day come to see things his way, or you would go to hell. And he was satisfied with either outcome. So we would get there, we would be just about to get in the baptismal, and the pastor would appear behind us. And he would say, boys, 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 I know you want to get in there, but that is not a toy. He said, when a man does things purely for his own enjoyment, and not for the benefit of others or the glory of God, he will be stained and tainted that others may know. And we thought, wow, that is good stuff. I mean, it didn't make us not want to get in the baptism, but we had to agree that it was good stuff. And that pastor hated the way that we were doing the offering. But any pastor worth his or her salt knows that there's only so many battles you can win. And taking on the little old ladies who run the Vacation Bible School is not a wise career move. So he wasn't going to say anything about the scales that we were using for the offering, except by Thursday, he just couldn't stand it anymore. It was rubbing him wrong. So when it came time for the devotional, he got up to do devotional. And he didn't read some plithy little poem. No, he got up in the pulpit and he gave a full-bore sermon. And I'm not going to give you the whole sermon right now, even though you probably haven't been to church since, March a year ago. But let me just encapsulate this. He started by telling us the story. Jesus is in the temple with the disciples, and they're watching people give the offering. And the rich guys are coming up and just dumping tons and tons of cash into the offering plate. And the little old lady comes up and she puts in her 2 mites or her 2 pennies. And then Jesus turns to the disciples and he says to the disciples, who gave the greater offering? And one of the disciples gives one of those answers that make me think that the reason Jesus chose those 12 guys is because he knew that they were morons. And before you get angry or self-righteous, he knew that he could ask them questions that you and I needed to know the answers to, and they would say the first stupid thing that popped into their head, just like you and I would, and then Jesus could explain the correct answer, and we would know the right answer without ever having to open our mouth. See, he was already looking out for you. So, Jesus said, who gave the greater offering? And then, Mark was like, hey, who's got the red pencil? He's talking. Thank you very much. I think I stole that joke from Andy, but I like it. So Jesus said, who gave the greater offering? And one of the disciples says, clearly the rich men gave the greater offering. And Jesus says, no. The rich men gave from their abundance, while the little old lady gave from her poverty. And then the preacher quickly explained to us that what that means is when you give an offering, you're supposed to put yourself in a place where you become dependent upon God. The word abundance means more than you need. So if you're giving out of your abundance, you haven't given anything at all. But the little old lady gave everything she had. Therefore, she had given the greater offering, which parenthetically, or not parenthetically, yeah, parenthetically, that is in no way a prosperity verse. And also, if you are giving out of your abundance, don't quit. It's not doing you any good, but, you know, it's benefiting the rest of us. What are you saying to me?
Oh, you can also donate to the Avian Center.
I was going to say that. Yeah, I was going to work that right into the story.
Just in case.
And if you are giving out of your abundance, please give to, wait a minute, let me read it so I get it right. The Three Rivers Avian Center. You can go to tracwv.org or
.org, yeah.
tracwv.org and hit the donate button and please give out of your abundance. So, the preacher said to us that the rich men gave out of their perfidy. We didn't know what it meant either, but it sure seemed like a weird place to keep your money. And then he pointed at this scale and he told us that if we continued to give in this perfidious way, that the demons of hell, which are also not birds, would descend upon us, snatch our souls, and drag them down to the sulfuric pits. And we were like, yeah, right? Because we were Methodists, and Methodists don't have demons of hell. We have covered dish dinners. So we were moved. But again, not in the direction that the pastor had intended. It just caused Skeeter and I to remember the 1,000 pennies the little old lady had given us earlier that year. And we went home that night, and we got every penny in both of our houses. And we didn't put them in a Wonder Bread bag. We put them in a big wool hunting sock. I bet we had probably, 10 inches diameter of pennies, maybe 18 inches this way. And these were pre-1983 pennies. I'm talking 174 pennies to the pound. And when we got to the church the next morning, Skeeter kept those pennies behind his back. Because you're probably familiar with the notion that even the observation of an experiment can change the outcome of the experiment. The same theory is also true for a prank in church. The observation of the prank can greatly change the consequences of the prank. So Skeeter kept those pennies behind his back. And when it came time to do the offering, we lined up along the wall. And Skeeter got last in line and just sort of made his way slowly down. And when it was his time to put the pennies into the offering plate, he did not gently introduce the pennies into the blue can. He held that tube of socks about 10 inches above the can and just dropped it. So when those pennies hit the blue can, that side of the scale dropped dramatically, causing the other side of the scale to rise precipitously. And when the blue can hit the ground, the scale stopped, but the pink can didn't. It just kept going. And when it got to the end of the binder's twine holding it at the 2x4, the twine just ripped, and that pink can went sailing through the church. And every eye was on that can. And the pink can hit the ceiling. And when it hit the ceiling, again, it didn't stop. It punched a hole right through the ceiling. And we all stood there, staring at that hole. And then the demons of hell started to pour forth thousands and thousands of bats, which again, mammals, not birds, but they fly. Thousands and thousands of bats just roiling out of that hole. And everyone ran for their lives. Everyone ran from the church, clutching their souls tightly to their chests. Everyone, except Skeeter and I, because we knew that this was our moment. And we went straight for the baptism. And we didn't stop to look. We just put our hands on the side and vaulted over. And when we had gone just far enough that we could no longer halt our forward progression, when we were now nothing but slaves to Newton's first law, body in motion tends to stay in motion, which is very similar to Skeeter's first law, which is a body being chased by the law tends to stay in motion. But when all we could do was fly a little further forward and fall, we looked down and we saw that someone, some unknown person, had dyed the water red. So a few minutes later, when we joined the rest of the congregation, the rest of the kids on the front lawn, Skeeter and I were dripping and limping and dyed pink. And we heard a voice behind us that said, boys, boys, boys. When a man does things purely for his own enjoyment and not for the benefit of others or the glory of God, he will be stained and tainted that others may know. The end. Thank you. Now, did you lose an important note there? No, if you're going into the building, will you get my water bottle?
Yeah.
Thank you. If you jump ahead several years, Skeeter and I were working at Camp Horseshoe. We were counselors at Camp Horseshoe, which is just outside of St. George, which is just outside of Parsons, if that clears it up for you. And we were counselors in a YMCA camp, and it was myself. I'll get this straight. It was myself, my buddy Skeeter, our friend Wally, and our buddy Uncle Debo. We're all counselors in this one cabin. Now, Uncle Debo was not our uncle. In fact, Uncle Debo was a year younger than we were. But everybody in town called Uncle Debo because Uncle Debo was the last of 17 children. And when he was born, his parents were tired, and they just couldn't think of a name. So they thought, we'll just call him the boy until something better comes along. And then through the wonders of time and syllabic manipulation, the boy became da boy, which eventually became Debo. And then everybody called him Uncle because as the last of 17 children, he had nieces and nephews who were quite a bit older than he was. So it wasn't uncommon to be walking down Main Street and hear some matronly niece yell out, Uncle Debo, you pull your pants up right now. So everybody in town just called the poor kid Uncle Debo. So the four of us worked in a cabin, and these cabins were probably a little bit longer than that building right there. If you just want to pan over and show that building, that's where the birds are. But we didn't have birds in our cabin, we had children. And you walked in the front door, and there was a little foyer, and then on each side of that foyer there was a wing, and in each one of those wings there was probably 25 bunk beds. If you went straight through the foyer, there was a door, and then there was a little room that was maybe, 10 feet by 8 feet. And that's where Skeeter, myself, Uncle Debo, and Wally slept. On either side of the interior door, there was a bunk. I slept in the top bunk over here. Skeeter slept in the bottom bunk. Wally slept on the bottom bunk over here. Uncle Debo slept on the top bunk. And if you went straight through that room, there was another screen door so the four of us could come in and out of the cabin without bothering the children. Well, one day Wally cut his finger, and he cut it bad enough that we had to take him over the mountain to get stitches. And when we got back, we were helping him up the back stairs into the cabin. Well, we weren't really helping him because he was on painkillers, and the stairs were uneven, and it was fun to watch Wally try and negotiate those stairs. Well, he fell, and he had just enough sense to know that this hand was damaged. So he put it behind his back and tried to catch himself with this hand. And these two fingers bent all the way back to his wrist. I know, it's neat to see. Happened to someone else. Because you're like, ooh, can the human body do that? And then you're like, oh, not successfully. So we had to take him back over the mountain. And now he was on even more painkillers. So this time we did help him up the stairs because it was almost supper, and we didn't want to miss that. So we got Wally in bed. Uncle Debo, Skeeter, and I took the kids. We ate supper. We got them in bed. We got ourselves in bed. And I don't know. Don't throw it because you'll throw it way too hard. I'll just come get it. Thank you. We're not athletes in our family. Hold on one second. I'm sorry. So, we got the kids in bed, we got ourselves in bed, and I don't know how long I'd been asleep when I heard Skeeter on the bunk underneath me whispering, Bill, Bill, wake up, but don't move. Now, I don't know if you've ever been awoken in that fashion, but that is a difficult fashion in which to be awoken. Because you know that something awful is about to happen, and you want to go, wha! But you know if you go, wha! That you're going to die. So your body fills with adrenaline and you want to move, but you can't. So I sort of collected myself and I said to Skeeter as calmly as I could, what's happening? And he said, there's a skunk in the cabin. And I looked down over the edge of the bed, and I said to Skeeter, do you know that skunk is the favorite food of what kind of
Great horned owl.
Of a great horned owl. And he said, no, I was not aware of that. And I said, yeah, strangely, when they enter the Raptor Center, often they smell like skunks. But anyway, Skeeter said there's a skunk in the cabin. And I looked over the edge of the bed, and sure enough, there was a skunk milling around. And Skeeter said, close the door. And I knew what he meant. We had that door in there in the interior that went to the main part of the cabin. And we left that open at night so that we could hear what noises the kids were making that we were going to ignore. And Skeeter wanted me to close that door because if that skunk went out there, it was either going to go into this wing or this wing. One of those kids was going to see it, that child was going to scream, and then the skunk was going to go off. And I was thinking to myself, out there is 100 14-year-old boys who haven't bathed in a week. How much worse can it smell? But then it occurred to me that we were contractually obligated to look out for the goodwill of these children. And so I leaned forward and I shut the door as quietly as I could. It shut with a snick and didn't seem to faze the skunk at all. But somewhere in this process, Uncle Debo on the top bunk over here had awoken. And Uncle Debo said, there's a skunk in the cabin? And Skeeter said, yes. And Uncle Debo, now here's what you have to know about Uncle Debo. Uncle Debo was a farm boy, he was a country kid, but he just didn't have any common sense whatsoever. He wasn't that smart. I think as the last of 17 children, that his siblings had all claimed the intelligence genes before he'd come along, so he just wasn't that bright. He said, there's a skunk in the cabin? And Skeeter said, yes. And Uncle Debo said, will it bite? Now, that's the wrong question. If a mountain lion comes in, you don't think, does it stink? If a bear comes in, you don't think, does it have fleas, right? It's just the wrong line of thought. But Skeeter said, yes, the skunk will bite you. And Uncle Debo said, how did it get in here? And as if to answer that question, the screen door went, and a second skunk came in. So now we had two skunks milling around. And Uncle Debo said, if one of them bites me, will the other? And Skeeter said, yes. He said they're like hornets. And if you make one mad, you make all of them mad. And I was thinking, what are they, the Borg? They have a collective identity, or a collective conscience? That's a Star Wars joke that you haven't gotten yet, but you'll get it. You'll get it. Star Trek. That's what I said, Star Trek. We'll just edit that part out. I was just doing my best Bruce Willis from Die Hard 4. Anyway, they're like hornets. If you make one mad, you make all of them mad. And I was thinking, what are they, the Borg? And so, by this time I was laughing. But it was that quiet laugh. Skeeter was laughing too. It was that quiet laugh like you do when you're in school or in church or at a funeral. But clearly, we were laughing, and there were tears kind of coming out of my eyes and leaking into my ears, trying to think what to do. And then Skeeter finally got a hold of himself. And he said to me as calmly as he could, he said, Bill, did you brush your teeth? And I thought I knew where he was going with this, and so I said no. And Uncle Debo said, I brushed my teeth. Why is that important? And Skeeter said, because skunks are scavengers. They're like bears. They're attracted to scents. And if they smell the toothpaste, they'll come and investigate it. And Uncle Debo said, I'll be okay. I'm on the top bunk. And Skeeter said, why do you think people call skunks polecats? And Uncle Debo inhaled as though he never intended to exhale again. He wasn't trying to kill himself. He just wasn't going to breathe for the next 74 years. He just sort of went like that. And he inhaled so much air that he almost had to tinkle just a little bit. There's just no way to take that much volume into this area and not release a little volume down there. But he like that, and he was quiet, and Skeeter and I were laughing. I mean, almost to the point of laughing out loud. The bed was rocking at about a 3.4 on the Richter scale, and, I was just trying to figure out how we were going to get out of this situation when the screen door went, and a third skunk came in. So now there were 3 skunks milling around. Uncle Debo trying to hold his breath. Skeeter and I trying not to laugh out loud. Sure, we were taunting. But we were going to die in this situation anyway. Let our tombstone read they went down taunting. And then Wally, who had been passed out on painkillers. Wally was one of those, he was a perfect camp counselor. He was one of those weird people, one of those sick people who like to get up early in the morning.
Yes.
And, yeah, right. And so he'd wake up, not just did he wake up, but he was happy about it. So he'd wake out of bed and he'd be happy and he'd be singing a little happy song about trees and birds going chirpity chirp, chirp, chirp. And so he woke up, and in his drug-addled state, he just assumed it was morning. And so he said, "Good morning," and he jumped out of bed like he always did, and he landed in the center of a triangle of skunks. And he looked down, and with all the innocence of a drunk, Wally said, "Huh? Kitty cats." And he knelt down, and he reached out, and he started to scratch one of the skunks on the head. And the skunk didn't know what was happening. But it wasn't entirely unpleasant, so the skunk came closer. And Wally picked him up. And he stood up, and he turned to Uncle Debo. And he said, "Look, Uncle Debo, a kitty cat." And the skunk crawled off of Wally's hands and onto Uncle Debo. And Uncle Debo sat up, and he screamed. And the skunk bit him. And then all 3 skunks just went off. And Skeeter and I were laying there, laughing and choking and gagging and laughing some more, when we heard a voice from off in the ether that said, "Boys, boys, boys, when a man does things purely for his own enjoyment and not for the benefit of others or the glory of God, he will be stained and tainted that others may know." Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again. I'm Bill Lepp, just a brief commercial. And you can find me on the internet at Lepp, L-E-P-P, storytelling.com, or just type in Bill Lepp. I'm usually the first thing that comes up. But thank you guys very much, and we'll see you a little bit later.
All right, cool. Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
I think Alicia has
No,
has
just one and
some owl pellets, don't you, Alicia?
Yes, yes I do.
Oh,
Let's
nice.
see.
Lunchtime. Nothing like a little condensed owl.
You want to talk about owl pellets as we walk over there?
Yes. So, owls, when they eat, they like to swallow things whole most of the time. Not how we like to do it. Things obviously they can't chew and everything, so they just go ahead and swallow their mice or their rodents or their bugs or any of the other things that they would eat. Depending on the owl, it could be a number of different things. But they'll swallow these whole, and then the body of the owl will digest everything it can, and then it will bring up in a hard little pellet the fur, the bones, and anything else like teeth or something that the owl can't digest. And so then the owl will go, after it's pulled this back up, they'll usually be sitting and digesting when that happens. And so when you're out in the woods and something, you might look down under like a big tree bough and see these pellets. I'm going over here.
Ooh.
And because that is the owl's favorite perch, it sits there after its evening meal and likes to hold these up. So what we have here is owl pellets from 3 different owls. This large one here is from Hooli, who you met earlier, the great horned owl. And you can see it's larger, and you can see the bones and the fur. And here we have a pellet from a barred owl. You met a couple of those. You met Robbie and Riffle. They're barred owls. And this is a screech owl pellet. And you met, or you might have met, they like to hide a lot, is our 2 screech owls, Orla and Victor. And so what we're going to do now, we have some lovely volunteers to help us dissect these. So what we're gonna do, because these are kind of, you know, not the cleanliest things, we're gonna go ahead and pass these out for you guys.
Here, you can put this on if you want.
Okay.
Did you say that the owls swallow their food whole?
They do. They do swallow their food whole.
But they have little tiny mouths, don't they?
They open them really wide. I'll give you guys each.
You can move that out in the sun a little bit and maybe get a little warmer.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah? Does that sound good?
Let's do that.
Oh, we'll just back right up then, huh? Okay.
All right.
Wendy's got all the ideas.
I like my owl pellets better when I'm warm.
All right.
Wait, you know, man.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys each a pellet here.
Do we only need one glow?
No, you may have another. If you would like to.
I'm just saying.
Everybody else gets to. Just you just get the one.
All right. So I've gone ahead and I went ahead and printed you each out one of these printouts as well. If you would so like, I think they're stuck together. So our owls eat a variety of things, not as much as they would when they're out in the wild. Is mine. Here you go. But most of the ones we have prefer the mice and the rats. Sometimes they do get us another variety of other foods, such as quail or
Chipmunks.
chipmunks. Yes, when we can get them. So, all right.
Do
So,
the screech owls eat the quail? Because isn't a quail bigger than a screech owl?
no, they wouldn't eat the screech
Okay.
owl.
Our food comes out of the freezer. It's already like dead, so they don't have to catch it.
All right, so I'm just going to go ahead and start with this great horned owl pellet from Miss Hooley.
She's brave, no glove.
No glove, you know, and we handle quite a bit of stuff at the Avian Center. I'm pretty used to it, but I'll be washing my hands after, of course, and I recommend everybody do that. All right, so, okay, first thing first, I definitely see, I think it is almost a full skull. Looks like there is the top of the roof of the mouth and maybe a tooth there. It's definitely looking like that. Let's see, I'll take that apart a little bit more. It's all fairly still attached. And that's one thing about a lot of birds will pull up a pellet. But you use them from owls because owls' digestive system doesn't break them down as much as a hawk's would. So if we pulled out a hawk pellet, you wouldn't be able to see as much defined bone structure and everything left. So yeah, it's actually...
Is that for any particular reason?
It's just how they evolved. The diurnal hawks have an extra body part that the owls don't, called their crop. And the crop will digest it some first before it sends it to the stomach. Whereas the owl, it goes straight to the stomach and gets digested there. Yeah, so I'm thinking here, size-wise, it definitely has to be from a rat. And you know, I think actually it might be a scapula, and I was wrong. That's what that looks like.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a shoulder blade?
Yeah.
Yes.
Science Bill.
Nice.
Too bad there's not some sciencey Bill guy. Maybe I could go into that market.
All right, and then I pulled up some spinal cord as well, and I do believe that would be from a rat as well, size-wise. Do you guys have anything interesting in yours?
Let's start.
Yeah. I would like to point out that hers is black, and that's not because of the owl it came from. That's because of the color of the rodent that was
So
eaten.
this is mostly fur that we're...
Most of it is fur, yes.
They've got a lot of little fragments.
Yes.
I found
Ooh.
a big
Oh,
that's like 10 points.
yeah, look at that. That's gotta be
What do you think it is?
maybe a femur.
Maybe a femur.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's like almost
What?
like
There's
That's
bonus
so
points if you can play it. There's definitely... Oh, here we go. Here we go.
Gosh.
oh god there.
It's Backbone,
Oh,
maybe?
yeah, I think so. Part of a spine.
I think I also found part of a spine.
Oh, good
There's lots of little pieces in here.
What do you recommend?
Well,
Now there's
that
little.
piece
I'm
is
going to
going
say
be-
that that's another piece of a spine. You see how
Very
it has
cool.
the vertebrae coming
Yeah,
out?
yeah.
Shape of it there.
Now this is
No, I'm just
something
gonna go
obviously you would do in the wild to determine what things have been eating.
Yes, you can do that. Scientists will use it for that reason. And then there's also owls have been around for
Ellie found something
really long time. And so people can go into caves that have existed for equally long time and pull up ancient owl pellets and see what they were eating then.
That's crazy. That's so neat.
Ellie,
Yes.
what do you have there?
I
Girl, you got
don't
something
know.
big.
It is big. Let's see. Oh. Go.
Ellie always gets the best.
Nice.
You know what they say about younger siblings?
Let's see here.
Always getting the better owl.
Ellie's about to pull out a tiny but perfectly preserved human skull.
I think this one is part of a pelvis. That
No,
Noah
that looks
pulled
like
up.
the other
There
side.
you go, no.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So were owls? Wait, I got the wishbone. Were owls eating remarkably different things?
Well, yes, it would depend on the time period, but
Their rib bones, maybe.
I think a lot of the fauna in the past, you would have had a lot larger mammals, and I think even the owls were larger a long time ago.
What did I learn the other day about moose? They are the
They're
last
the-
of the megafauna
They are.
in North America.
Yes.
They should bring back giant ground sloths. I miss those guys.
Bring them back.
They were pretty amazing, weren't they?
Yeah, they were
When you
like
go to the
30 feet
museum.
tall on their back legs.
Oh my gosh, I found my other part to my, I think, pelvis?
Yes, that looks great.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting.
good
That's
one,
like
too.
20
Yeah,
points.
there you go.
Wow. Dang.
I know, right? You totally would
I
have.
won the owl pellets.
Yes, you did.
There was something wrong with this mouse.
I think this mouse was nothing but ribs.
Ooh,
Should
that is
definitely-
a very clear vertebrae.
Oh, good
Nice,
job.
Dad.
We should definitely turn this into an arcade game somehow.
Dad got the experimental boneless mice at the moment.
It's a vegan owl.
Freaking owl.
Ooh, 2 ribs.
There, great job.
I think that's all I've got.
Oh my gosh, I found another thing. There's so much hidden.
I think this
like a
rat
little
was
treasure
rather
hunt.
large. Look at the size of some of these ribs
Oh
there.
yeah.
my gosh, I don't know what this is. but it's
Yeah.
And you said that other birds just digest more, so you don't get this from the other raptors that you have here?
Yes, you'll have a pellet, and it will be everything will be softer and kind of just fall apart a little bit. There won't be as many hard bones in it as this.
You wind up with a skull and maybe something, but the rest of the bones will be gone.
I think the next time you do this with a guest, you definitely should just like prior get a little tiny human skull and put it in there. Just as a prank.
That'd be
actually did discuss that.
Well, we'll keep that in mind, maybe.
Every once in a while, we get a surprise. Like if a wild mouse sneaks in, we don't generally have a rodent problem because
yeah.
Yeah, I'll say.
yeah, it's like a suicide mission for them. And every once in a while we'll go, wait a minute, we didn't feed this to our birds. Where did it come from?
We were down in there's a storytelling festival, the Shoal Storytelling Festival in Florence, Alabama, and on the campus of the college there, they have 2 full-grown lions,
Oh boy.
and in a giant enclosure. I mean, I'm sure the lions don't think it's giant, but from that building to those trees over there, and about this area wide, so these 2 lions are just chilling in this thing, and a squirrel walked into the far end. And it was just amazing. The male lion didn't do anything, but the female lion stood up, but just, like she was like this high off the ground. And she stood in that impossible position, I mean, I thought it was impossible for like 10 minutes just watching that squirrel.
A squirrel.
Coiled.
And the squirrel was just slowly coming further and further. And when that squirrel got to the exact middle of the cage, you know, when it's equal distance from my other side, that lion just... And the squirrel was like, nope, not today, Jack. And just barely made it out. But it was just, it was amazing to see.
The squirrel didn't actually say, nope, not today, Jack, until it got out.
Yeah, right.
Because it was close. We were like, ah!
And that squirrel mom was like, Johnny!
I told you to stay out of the cage. We were telling the kids, just you may see, you know, nature in action right here.
Yeah, really.
You know?
This-
Wild Kingdom, right in your
That's
backyard.
right in your backyard. That's right.
This mouse was all ribs and backbone.
You must have had the same.
It didn't have a skull.
No, this one ate the same thing.
Usually they
That's
eat the
so.
skull first because it's, you know, it's crunchy on the outside,
Uh-huh.
chewy on
Chewy
the
on the
inside. They
inside,
like
yeah.
that a lot. That's usually the first thing they go for. So maybe he ripped it off the day before or something.
Oh, yes.
So they will eat things that aren't live anymore?
Sure, they're just as lazy as the rest of us.
So that's something they do even in the wild?
Oh yeah, most raptors will scavenge.
Oh, okay.
Sure, which is why we always talk about the lead issue, because especially in the wintertime when hunting gets hard, they're out there just anything, roadkill, whatever they can find. Yeah.
And do you feed the same things to the ones you're going to release into the wild?
We do, except that if we've had to raise them, then we switch off to things we catch. Small rodents like chipmunks and squirrels or rabbits.
So that they learn what to do with a living critter.
Right. Yeah. And
Oh,
there is.
And there ends that experiment.
We just made
like a
internet
little-
history.
Yes, I think I shut my mouth though, so there's that. Oh gosh. Yes, so we've had quite a bit of success with this owl pellet dissection.
I feel like
hope
we
you
have.
guys have enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I didn't find any of that.
There's one other thing you should know about owl pellets
I
that is
feel like
really
there's more than one thing.
and that is that from an archaeological perspective, they're extremely valuable. You can find owl pellets that are ancient. In fact, they can be fossilized. And there are places where owls have inhabited caves for tens of thousands of years. And pellets have piled up in there. And by dissecting the pellets from these caves, you can get an unbroken history of different animals by checking the bones.
Yeah.
That's just crazy.
So if you're in a cave, obviously, that's been inhabited by owls, you can be pretty sure that's an owl pellet. But if I just came across one of these in the woods, could you tell if it was an owl pellet or a different bird pellet before you did
Pull it
any?
apart? No.
Oh, you start to play
Because snakes even cough them up.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, probably.
You think?
Yeah.
I don't think I could.
If you knew what you're doing, yeah.
Now,
Somebody could tell the difference.
I would assume that the owls that eat bugs don't have pellets, right?
They do actually. Mm-hmm.
What are they spitting up?
It would be exoskeleton and maybe a little bit of wings or hard pieces like that. And other birds like herons and other things, they'll doesn't have to be a hawk family or owl family. They'll have these as well. They'll even smaller birds that eat a lot of bugs will come up with the
Interesting.
undigestible things.
That's where the term hawk up comes from.
Probably.
All right.
Well, I believe we're going to be heading over here.
Rodney is ready.
Hey.
Hey, my name is Rodney Davis. I'm a volunteer at Hanging Rock Raptor Observatory. It is the site of an old fire tower on Peters Mountain in Monroe County, West Virginia, above Waiteville. It is in the National Forest. One of the questions I get a lot is, when are you open? Well, it never really closes. It's public property. Doesn't even have a lock on the door. And we get year-round visitors from our visitors log reflects over 40 states, and a dozen foreign countries are always represented every year from our visitors log. It's the hike is it's considered moderate. It's about a 1 mile hike and with 350 feet in elevation rise. People ask how difficult it is. It's really as difficult as you want to make it. This gentleman holding the camera could probably do it in 20 minutes. It takes me about 40. It takes some people over an hour. But it is a beautiful view once you get to the top. You can see pretty much 360 degrees. You can see Flat Top Mountain in Raleigh County. You can see Cold Knob in another direction, which I think is Nicholas. In another direction, you can see the Peaks of Otter, which is in Bedford, Virginia. And in another direction, you can see Buffalo Mountain in Floyd County. So you have a beautiful view once you get there. In the fall, we use it starting in September to monitor hawk migration. Or hawk and eagle migration. We monitor 12 species of hawks, eagles, and falcons. And we identify them as we pass. We make a record. And all of this data goes to the Hawk Migration Association of North America. They collect information from all over, every hawk watch site. And we're the only one in West Virginia that reports data. We usually get around 6,000 migrants there a year, which really sounds like a lot, but it's not compared to other hawk watches. There's watches that get tens of thousands a year. Some get tens of thousands a day, believe it or not. But we do get a very good look at the raptors that pass Hanging Rock. So if you're an amateur photographer in the fall, September, October, it's a good place to get some pictures. Like I say, we start in September with the broadwing season. That's the species that migrate in flocks. We'll get hundreds a day during that stretch. Other species are later migrants, October, November. You'll start picking up more Sharpies, red tails, golden eagles. And you can look at our count online to see what species come through when, if you're interested in, say, seeing golden eagles. One of the questions we get is, how do you know you're not counting the same bird twice? Are you just seeing one bird making 6,000 passes past the tower? Well, our vantage point, we can see miles up Sweet Springs Valley. And so we can see them coming on an established migration route. And we do have to make the determination, is the bird a migrant or is it local? So we only count the migrants. So another question is, can you see trends in your data? We've collected data, or someone has collected data at Hanging Rock since 1952. It's been a hawk watch for a really long time. So the only trend we can see really is in the bald eagles. Most species, we have good years and we have bad years, but the only trends we see really are the bald eagles. This is the eastern corridor, and the eastern migration corridor basically goes from the Ohio Valley clear to the coast. So they have a lot of choices as to how they travel. I mean, the hawks will come down the Alleghenies. Some will keep going down the Blue Ridge, but Peters Mountain will snag some of them and bring them our way. So we have good years and bad years, but the bald eagle is a species that we can see a definite population increase. In the 1980s, we averaged one bald eagle per year. In the 90s, we averaged 12 bald eagles a year. In the 2000s, we were up to averaging 39. And from 2010 to 2019, we averaged 193, and now we're getting about 250 migrant bald eagles per year. So at that one species, we can see a definite trend. Like I say, we have volunteers that man for the most part during the migration season, starting in September, but visitors also participate. Visitors will call our attention to birds that we might miss, even if you don't know how to identify the birds. please come and help. We welcome all the help we can get, and it's a good way for visitors to participate. And if you're interested in learning, we will teach you. If you're an amateur birder and you want to learn flight IDs of raptors, then Hanging Rock, since we do have a good look at the birds, is a very good place to do that. So if we have a Facebook page and that I monitor. Like I said, my name's Rodney. Any more questions you have, I would be happy to answer. We have a website that has basic information, but the Facebook page is what has most of the pictures on it, like this picture here that Brian Hurt took. Brian posts a lot of pictures. Charlie Cale, plus visitors will post scenic photos. So hopefully at some point this fall, maybe I'll see you on the mountain. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice.
About the from the Facebook group. They're asking if any birds at the Hanging Rock Raptor are tagged.
No, we don't do any tagging. All we do is monitor migration in the fall.
Is there perhaps a way you can see sometimes that they are already previously tagged? Are they too far away?
Actually, we're in the process of, the DNR is in the process of putting a MODIS station on the tower. So any bird that comes by that has a transmitter on it, it automatically picks that up and records the location. So,
that's amazing.
But
wow.
hopefully
That's awesome.
Hopefully that's going to be done maybe later on this summer, but we're not sure. But the preparations have already been made. The measurements are taken. We're in communication with the gentleman that's going to do it, and he says it will happen at some point this summer.
That is awesome. Very good. Cool. Thank you, Rodney. Appreciate it. Hanging Rock Raptor Observatory, folks. If you haven't been up there, you're missing it. Get up there. It's fun. Really beautiful spot. Let's go over here and see what Kevin Johnson's got going over here. Kevin Johnson is with Appalachian Headwaters. He's with the Beekeepers Collective, Appalachian Beekeepers Collective. And he's going to talk to us a little bit, since it's springtime and we have bees around getting warmed up and coming out. He's going to talk to us a little bit about bees.
My name is Kevin Johnson. I'm an environmental educator with Appalachian Headwaters, and I work on a few different programs that the public knows about. Appalachian Beekeeping Collective, where we train beekeepers in our region in 8 counties in southern West Virginia in natural beekeeping best practices, so they can have sustainable apiaries. And I also work for Camp Waldo, which is a camp that summer camp we hold in Summers County, just down the road from here. And migration is a really special concept. I love migration because it integrates so many different habitats and so many different creatures. Honeybees, which so many of us as humans, we have a special relationship with honeybees. They're a pollinator that we all feel passionately about and is responsible for so much of our food production these days. They're a great way to teach about how what all of us do in the environment affects our pollinators. And so even though honeybees, or you might hear them called European honeybees, are not native to North America, they're a great teaching tool about the other pollinators that we have. So for example, I was just reading up on this because I don't remember these things very well. We have 4,000 native bees in North America, which is kind of amazing, and 400 to 450 in there in West Virginia. Now, most of those are solitary bees that you might not even pay attention to, like sweat bees. You'll see mining bees. Most of them are ground nesters, so they're making their homes in the ground. You may have heard this before if you all live in a rural area or in a farm. It's hard to imagine this, but in an acre of ground, in the topsoil of an acre of ground, so that's like maybe 6 inches of soil, there is as much biomass, which is pretty much insects like larvae, like these ground nesting bees, as a 1,000-pound steer that might be grazing on top of that ground. So there's a lot of life in the soil, and we don't realize it a lot of times. So one of the many things that we say that we all can do is to not disturb the soil so much, and also provide plenty of mixed habitat. I was walking around here looking at all the plants coming up that will
benefit the bees now, but also going into the fall before they overwinter. So let's take a quick look at this beehive and see what we can see. So I've never checked this hive before, but they all have the same structure. This is a very young hive that's a split from a strong overwintered hive. So you can see here, this is our inner cover. All of these bees you can see here are workers, and they're all female. Now honeybees, like bumblebees, the minority of bees are social, which means that they form large colonies with the division of labor. So in this hive, hopefully, we have a queen. I don't know yet, but there will only be one queen in this hive. All of these smaller bees here are workers, and they're all female, and so they're all doing different jobs in the hive. And their job in the hive at any given time is based on their age. Just like when we age, all insects age too, and they develop different capabilities based on their changing physiology at that age. So the youngest bees, their first job is to clean out the cells for their sisters. And then they build wax, and then they receive food from the foragers and store that food. And then at the very end of their life, they are foragers. So they find the pollen, they help plants reproduce through pollination and bring in that nectar that they turn into honey that we love. So let's just take a look at a frame or two. Smoke them a little bit more. It's a little chilly out, so that's probably why they're a little agitated. When a hive is humming along really well, like if this were a warmer day, there's plenty of pollen and nectar in the environment at this time of spring. They're just as calm as can be, and they usually would ignore me. So you can see on this frame, they're storing nectar. They know exactly when that nectar has been cured enough, so it needs to be cured below 18% water. And so they know exactly when it's cured enough to cap it. So this is not cured enough. They fan it with their wings to remove the moisture. All right. So let's go to a brood frame. So the brood is in the middle. As you all know, this time of spring is a little bit touchy for perennial insects like honeybees, meaning that they overwinter as a cluster. They don't die off like most bees and most insects. Usually it's just mated females that will overwinter in the ground. All the rest of the workers will die off, like yellow jackets. That's a wasp though. So here we go. Here's a brood frame. That's actually pretty spotty. Down here you'll see the larger cells. Those are drones. So those are the male bees. They have larger bodies. They almost look like football players compared to their sisters. Here's one right here. Yeah, they don't sting. The workers can sting, and you might remember that they only sting once, unlike wasps that can sting you over and over and over again. Okay, so one of my main jobs as a beekeeper is to scan the frame to see if I see eggs, and I do, which is evidence of the queen. I don't need to see her myself. I know that in the past 3 days there's been a queen in here, so I don't want to disturb them too much. She's got a great question. She's got a longer body. The longer body and she moves differently are the two main things that I tell people. Because she's the only mated bee in the hive, her body is much longer. Now, she might look quite a bit different than her daughters. So her abdomen might be a more solid color, might be a darker color, and she's moving differently. She's pausing to lay eggs, and all the other bees are kind of feeling her. They're spreading her scent all through the hive every day, all the time, just so all the workers know that she's their queen.
You say that you weren't sure earlier that you weren't sure there was a queen in that hive?
Because I hadn't opened this hive. I brought it from camp. We have so many hives. I hadn't been in this hive personally myself.
I never knew that you could have a hive without a queen, so that was fascinating to me.
Yeah, well, I hadn't checked it before this because I didn't want to open it. It's a little chilly.
Right.
And so I'm just checking it now, and there are eggs, so there is a queen in there.
Are they making royal jelly, or do they only do that when there's not a queen?
Royal jelly is what they feed to all of the bees at the very first few days. So they will give royal jelly to the first 3 days to all eggs, so the workers, drones, queens. But the difference in their development as a larva has to do with queens. They'll feed them only royal jelly all the way until they cap it. And that makes the difference in how she develops.
We had a question.
Yeah.
They were wondering where the eggs are, and if you could show them one more time.
Okay, I'll show you a different frame because that was a little spotty.
Okay.
Let's see, we'll try this one. It's warming up, which is nice. One thing that, of course, bees, we always recommend that beehives be in the sun or partial sun, because just like with humans, if it's too shaded or too moist, it promotes disease. But the queen, she never leaves the hive when she comes back to after she mates, when she's very young. Look at that beautiful brood frame. So that's all capped brood. Underneath those cappings, larva is going through metamorphosis to a pupal stage. And then emerging as an adult bee.
So you said workers, drones, and queens, plural. How
Queen.
does that work, like how they lay multiple queens? Like, do they just decide one to become the queen, or how does that work?
Good question. So in a social insect, like yellow jackets, like hornets, like honeybees, like bumblebees, there is a division of labor, so there really is only one reproductive member of that colony at one time, which is the queen. Okay, so, but instead of a solitary bee reproducing, each individual female is reproducing or passing her genes on to a new generation, they're assisting her to reproduce, and the way they do that is through swarming. So once they get a strong enough signal from the environment, like with the locust bloom, is usually a pretty strong signal for them here, they will start to make queen cells, which will be the new queen that will take over when the old queen leaves with half of the bees in a swarm. That's what a swarm is. And so the new queen will emerge, she'll mate, and then she'll stay there. Now they will produce multiple cells because it's their insurance policy. They'll make dozens of them at one time. And those virgins will emerge, and they'll fight it out, and one will win and stay. All right. Well, I wanted to show you something over here because I think it's going to be hard to see. There are eggs in there, but they're really hard to see. So I'll show you on this bed frame. I adapted into a brood frame. So a typical brood frame, for efficiency's sake, and this is true of a lot of other insects, they will lay the brood in the center so they can keep it warm, they can protect it, right? And so just pretend that these are little eggs. Oh, my little stickums fell off. So the eggs will be in the middle. They look like little grains of rice. So she lays them because her abdomen's sticking down the cell, sticking up like this, and then over 3 days it will fall down and it'll hatch. So let's imagine that these are all eggs in the middle of the frame. Then, oops, they will hatch and they will become larvae. And what you want to see is shiny white larvae. That means they're well fed. They're not under nutritional stress. It isn't a drought. Because when there's a drought, of course, the flowers will stop offering nectar as a reward. So they're using their food stores, maybe they're rationing. And so you want them to be nice and shiny. And so that the house bees have an easy job of feeding, they'll feed several times a day, each of these larvae. They will store food on the perimeter of the frame. So it's easy for them to go back and forth, back and forth. Pollen comes in all different colors. A lot of people think of it as yellow and orange, but like corn pollen or goldenrod pollen, but it comes in blue, purple, red, black, all different kinds among our native wildflowers. So they would put these near the larva on the sides, and then they'd put honey also on the sides. This is carbohydrates. So carbohydrates and protein for their babies. I don't know if that helps.
Pollen is protein?
Uh-huh.
Well, something every day.
So that's a very quick representation of how they structure their brood frames. I just wanted to point out, because I know we're short on time here, it's great to explore right around you. There's so many, like I said, hundreds of native bees, so many different types of butterflies. I was walking around and seeing all kinds of violets. I don't see them right here, but mining bees, that's important for mining bees, which is a solitary ground nesting bee here. There are several fritillary butterflies that depend solely on violets. And so just like you hear about the monarchs depend on milkweed, I saw one milkweed over there. I was looking for milkweed. Monarchs might be listed as endangered. They're obviously a critical migratory species that we think of, but there's so many other, maybe less well-known pollinators that depend on specific flowers. Oh, here's a violet right here.
We have a ton of violets up in
Yeah.
the house. Yeah.
I saw a bunch over there, but not so much here. So all that is to say that we really want to encourage a wide variety of flowering plants because they have so many benefits. Honeybees are generalists, so they'll visit anything that they can get into. Whereas those fritillary butterflies or squash bees, which overwinter right where you had your squash plants in the ground the previous year, they are specialists for squash flowers. They're the best at pollinating squash plants. So, yeah. A diversity of plants supports a diversity of pollinators, which supports us. I just wanted to point out one last thing in our last time, that there's great resources. If you want to do anything for pollinators at your home, or, I don't know, just learn more about our pollinators, the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation is all over the country. They put out great publications. So this one's Farming for Bees, Habitat Planning for Beneficial Insects. They also have small, like for example, they have these flowering plant guides, and this is stuck together for the Mid-Atlantic, and when they flower at different times of year. And here is my printed copy of the West Virginia Pollinator Handbook, which you can easily find online. It has so much information in it, but if you want to beef up on this information, I would definitely visit this. We're on Facebook. The best way to reach us, since we're all in the field, is Appalachian Beekeeping Collective on Facebook, Apple Bee Collective, and appheadwaters.org is our website.
Well, I'm going to do, this story does have a bird in it, and you said the bridge story earlier, and I kind of said no, but I changed my mind, so I'm going back. So, there stands a bridge in Fayette County, West Virginia. It's the longest single-span arch bridge in the world and the second tallest bridge in North America. It's called the New River Gorge Bridge, and if you've never been to see it, you owe yourself a trip because not only is it beautiful, but it's also part of the nation's newest national park. But now that messed up my story. If you've never been to see it, you owe yourself a trip because it's quite a sight. But I am speaking from experience when I tell you that you should never, ever, for any reason, stop in the middle of that bridge. You see, it was the second Saturday in May. I had just woken up. There was no particular significance to the day, except I realized it was already May, and I had yet to go fishing that entire year. I figured I owed myself a trip down to the Marmot Locks to do a little carp fishing, so I threw all my gear in my car, the Great Golden Carp Cruiser, the GC for short, and I headed out. Now, I only had $5 in my pocket, so when I stopped at the local 7-Eleven, I bought the cheapest six-pack of soda that I could find, a couple of Slim Jims, and a can of Green Giant corn for the carp. That left me with $1. I decided that I was going to buy one of those scratch-off lottery tickets, and folks, it was my lucky day. That ticket was worth $1,000. Now, I looked at that ticket, and I knew right away there was just one of two things I could do with it. I could either take that ticket home, give it to my wife, and never see a penny of that money again. Or I could cash that ticket, spend whatever I wanted to, and donate the proceeds to the West Virginia Three Rivers Avian Center. No. Or I could cash that ticket, spend whatever I wanted to, and tell her I won whatever was left over. Well, I cashed that ticket quicker than a Confederate dollar at Appomattox, and that joke's going to be a lot funnier to some people in this country than other people in that country. And that cashier counted out 1,000 crisp new dollar bills. I put $20 worth of gas in the Great Golden Carp Cruiser, and I headed out to see wild, wonderful West Virginia with 980 crisp new dollar bills in my pocket. But this is where that bridge comes back in the story. Because you see, I got about a quarter way across that bridge when I started hearing the ominous thump, thump, thump of a flat tire. Well, a flat's a flat and there's nothing you can do but fix it. So I coasted to a stop, dead in the middle of that bridge. And I can tell you right now that sooner or later, I'm going to buy a tire iron for that car. Because by the time I got those lug nuts off with a pair of channel locks, I was hot, tired, and mad. I was so mad that when I reached into the trunk of the car, I pulled out the spare tire, and I just threw it as hard as I could. Well, that tire hit the bridge, and it bounced. It bounced about 20 feet up into the air, which would have been just fine, except when it came down about 2 feet from the edge of the bridge, but it was the wrong 2 feet. I took a step over to the edge of that bridge and I watched as that tire fell 864 feet, clear down to the New River, where it bounced twice and landed standing upright in 3 feet of water. Well, I looked a quarter mile to my left and 864 feet down the bank, and I looked a quarter mile to my right and 864 feet down the bank. I did some ciphering, and I figured out that it was going to take me anywhere from 3 hours to 6 days to hike down there and get my tire. And that's provided I didn't break any bones in the process. But it was about that time that I remembered the monster stick. Now, the monster stick is my 9-foot surf casting rod, complete with 6 miles of brand new 50-pound test strand carp cord. And it occurred to me that I could simply tie a hook to the end of that line, lower it down, snag my tire, and bring it back up without ever taking a step. Well, I started to feel good again then, but I think it was probably the same sort of good feeling that John Brown had just before he put his Harper's Ferry plan into action. Because you see, everything went fine for about the first 500 feet. But then the biggest red bird I'd ever seen spotted that hook, mistook it for a descending spider, swooped in, swallowed it whole, I feel awful saying that here, swallowed it whole, and landed in a rhododendron bush up on the shore. Well, I thought about my mother, her bird feeders. I tried to gently coax that bird out of that rhododendron bush. But when that didn't work, I started to think about my West Virginia state income tax return and how every year I had checked that box to donate $1 to the non-game wildlife fund. And I said to myself, Bill, you bought that bird. You're going to have to do what you have to do. And I hauled back on the monster stick just as hard as I could, and that rhododendron bush verily erupted in a mushroom cloud of crimson feathers and red petals, and that entire blob was headed on a perfect trajectory straight for that tire when lightning struck twice. You see, a 4-foot brook trout mistook that blob for his fly of the month subscription, came out of the water, paid cash on delivery, swallowed that whole thing, dove back in the river, swam upstream, right through the hole in the middle of my tire, hit his head on a rock, did a couple of somersaults, and landed up on shore. Well, I just stood there watching to see what was going to happen next. And sure enough, before long, there was a rustling in the underbrush. Big old black bear stepped out. He sniffed that fish a couple of times, and then he swallowed it whole. Well, I started to feel good again then, because I knew there was nothing in the air, nothing in the water, and nothing in the woods that was going to come and eat that bear. So I just started reeling. I reeled that bear off the shore and into the water. I reeled him downstream until his head went right through the hole in the middle of that tire, and I just started reeling up till that tire settled over his shoulders, and I just reeled and reeled and reeled. Well, after a while, though, I heard a voice behind me. Now, mind you, this was no ordinary voice. This was sort of like when the loudspeaker goes off at school and says, "Bill Lepp, please come to the office." And that fella, he said to me, he said, "Son, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm trying to get my tire back." He said, "It looks to me like you're fishing." And I think it's safe to say that that fellow was a mite surprised when he took a step to the edge of that bridge, looked down, and saw what I was bringing up. I think it's safe to say I was a mite surprised as well, though, because as it turns out, he was a state game warden. Well, I didn't know what else to do except to keep on reeling, so I reeled that whole mess up to the edge of that bridge there. I just kind of lifted it up over. That bear just lay there. Most of the fight had gone out of him about 600 feet. But that officer, He looked at that and he said, son, I don't know why you did this. He said, I don't care to know why you did this, but I can tell you you're in a heap of trouble. And he reached in his back pocket and pulled out his notepad. He reached in his front pocket, pulled out his pencil. He licked it and he commenced to writing. And he wrote and he wrote and he wrote and he wrote and he wrote, pausing only long enough to ask me my name, date of birth, social security number, home address, that sort of thing. Every now and again, he'd flip a page and carry a number. And when he was finally done writing, he said to me, son, he said, do you see that bear right there? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's a black bear. He said, that's the state animal of the great state of West Virginia, which you've taken illegally out of season without a permit. He said, that's a $500 fine. He said, do you see that fish sticking out of that bear's mouth? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's a brook trout. He said, that's the state fish of the great state of West Virginia, which you've taken from a no-fishing zone using illegally obtained bait. That's a $100 fine. He said, do you see that bird sticking out of that fish's mouth? I said, yes, sir. He said, that's a cardinal, son. He said, that's a state bird of the great state of West Virginia. That's a non-game bird, which you have taken from a federally protected bird sanctuary. That's a $100 fine. He said, do you see those flowers sticking out of that bird's beak? I just sort of nodded my head. He said, those are rhododendron flowers, son. That's a state flower of the great state of West Virginia, which you've taken from a national no-flower picking zone. That's a $50 fine. He said, do you see that tire around that bear's neck? He said, that tire constitutes litter. He said, that's litter which you have caused to be thrown into a national scenic waterway. That's a $200 fine. He said, those fines in aggregate shall total $950, payable in cash on the spot right now, or you can opt for legal confinement until such payment is made. Well, he looked at me in my old blue jeans and the great golden carp cruiser kind of teetering on three wheels there, and he said, you look like the kind that's going to opt for legal confinement. Well, he was already looking at me like I was crazy, so when I reached for my pocket, he went for his gun. But I just pulled out that wad of crisp new $980 bills, and I counted out 950 of them for him. And he was so pleased with that he introduced me to his brother-in-law, who fixed my flat tire for the amazing low price of $28. Now, as I was heading home, I was thinking to myself that if every fishing trip was going to be that expensive, I wasn't going to be able to go all that often. But then I thought about my wife. And I've told you people this story, and I'm sure you believe every word of it. But my wife, she's the suspicious type. And if I'd gone in with this tale, she wouldn't have had none of it. So even though it's against my grain, I decided I was going to have to lie to her. When I walked in the door, she said, how'd it go? I said it went just fine. And as I was leaving the room, I reached in my pocket, pulled out those last two crisp $1 bills, and I said, oh yeah, I almost forgot. I won this for you in the lottery today. The end. All right. Thank you. That story was, my brother Paul wrote that story. He started in the Liars Contest in about 1986, and I think that was the first story he told, and that was the second story he told in the Liars Contest. And he won it 6 times. I only won it 5. So between the two of us, we have 11 Biggest Liar titles. Also, both of my children have won Biggest Liar titles. And we play a game at home when we're at the supper. 4 of us, we say, raise your hand if you've won the Liars Contest. And my wife is the only person who can't raise her hand. And then we all just get kind of shun her because she's not a quality. I know, it's a hard world. It is a hard world. But anyway, my brother wrote that story in about 1986, and that kind of that's sort of what inspired me to be a storyteller as well. So I probably wouldn't be standing here doing this if it wasn't for that story. And then when my son over there was about 5 years old, we were up in the family room playing, and he said, let's play Kingdoms. And I said, okay. He said, I'll get the stuff from my kingdom. And he has always had a way of engineering games so that the best results go in his favor. And so he said, I'll get the stuff from my kingdom. And he got a Tyrannosaurus Rex and a Tonka truck fire truck and a Tonka truck dump truck and a jumbo jet. And he said, I will be the king of big things. And I said, okay, what do I get to be king of? And he gave me a marble and a jack. And he said, you can be the king of little things. And I said, ooh, that's a great idea for a story. You play by yourself. I'm going to my office. Cat's in the cradle. And so I went down to my office and I wrote this story. And I'm just going to, again, do a commercial since I'm on the internet. I wrote this story. It was originally about 1,500 words. And then a friend of mine said, do you want that to be a children's book? And I said, yes. So to make a very long story short, eventually this became the children's book, The King of Little Things. However, this oral version has about 750 more words than the written version. So if you want to compare and contrast the written version and the oral versions, please buy the book on the internet, The King of Little Things by Bill Lepp. Far away, long ago, on the other side of the mountain, there lived a king. He was the king of little things. He was the king of keys, coins, crumbs, and condensation. He was the king of needles, noodles, knots, beetles, baby rattles, little ballerina dolls, toy soldiers, pin cushions, pet names, and small kindnesses. Now, all around the king of little things, there were bigger kings. Kings of cities, kings of counties, kings of countries, and kings of continents. The big kings made their subjects pay for everything, for freedom, for food, for firewood. King of little things gave anything to anyone who asked politely. The big kings all had big castles. They'd have huge parties on Friday and Saturday night. King of little things had a little cabin, might have a few friends over. The big kings all had aspirations. The kings of cities wanted to be kings of counties. The kings of counties wanted to be kings of countries. The kings of countries wanted to be kings of continents. And the kings of continents wanted to rule the world. The king of little things just wanted to remember Mother's Day, which is tomorrow, for any of you who may have forgotten that. So, one day, one of the big kings, King Normus, decided it was time to take over the world. So he got together his generals, he got together his advisors, he amassed his armies, and he set out, and he crushed the kings of the cities, and he quashed the kings of the counties, he conquered the kings of the countries, he alliterated the kings of the continents. And when he thought that he had taken over the entire world, he had his tailors make him a fine suit with big brass buttons, and he had his jewelers make him a huge crown with thousands of tiny jewels. And he stood in front of everyone, and he said, I am now the biggest king that ever was. I am the king of the sky. I am the king of the mountains. I am the king of the rivers. I am the king of the oceans. I am the king of the whales. I am the king of the pachyderms. And he would have gone on like that forever, except a servant in the back of the room raised a tremulous hand. And he said, excuse me, my enormous sire. You are indeed the king of the sky and the king of the pachyderms. But I am afraid that there is one king whom you have forgotten in your quest to conquer the world. And King Norman said, who, which, what? What king have I forgotten in my quest to conquer the world? And the servant said, sir, you have overlooked his minuscule majesty, the king of little things. Well, this sent King Normus into a rage. He said, king of little things, little things don't have a king. He said, everybody knows that little things exist simply to serve the bigger things. But still in all, he amassed his armies, he got together his generals, and he set out to conquer the king of little things. And the king of little things was in the, so they got to the king of little things cabin, and the king of little things was in the kitchen doing the dishes when the army arrived, because he knew that it's the little things that matter the most. And he also knew, as David Holt likes to say, that no man has ever been willingly shot in the back while doing the dishes. So, he saw the big king's armies arrive. This was in the evening. He knew that they would wait till morning to attack. So the king of little things went out on his front porch, and he respectfully asked some of his subjects if during the night they would invade the big king's camp. And when the big king's soldiers awoke, they couldn't attack. Chiggers and ticks and mosquitoes had gotten underneath their armor. Athlete's foot fungus had crawled down their boots and in between their toes. They itched so bad they couldn't attack. There were worms in the wheat. There were worms in the meat, weevils in the wheat, flies in the fruit. Termites had eaten away the arrow shafts, the spear shafts, the cannon wheel, and the catapults. So King Normus requisitioned new equipment, new armor, steel arrow shafts, steel spear shafts, steel wheels on the cannon, steel catapult. So the king of little things asked his friend Rust to ride his friend Dew into the big king's camp. And once again, when the big king's soldiers awoke, they couldn't attack. Rust had eaten through their armor, it had eaten away the arrow shafts, the cannons wouldn't roll, the catapult was now about as dangerous as a cantaloupe. And so King Normus was in his enormous tent, marching back and forth. What am I going to do? How can I defeat this king? I can't defeat this king. He controls the little things to create chaos. And then he had an idea. He said, I know what I'll do. He said, I'll cheat. He said, I'll lie. Because the king of little things is not the king of lies. Because a lie, no matter how small, is never a little thing. He said, send a soldier with a flag of truce, get the king of little things, tell him to come to this headquarters here to discuss the situation of the siege. When he gets here, we'll capture him and we'll throw him in the dungeon. Well, they sent the soldier, and the king of little things came with him. He knew what was happening, but he knew his subjects would come to his aid if need be. And as soon as the king of little things walked into King Normus's tent, all of the little things recognized their king. The coins rolled out of King Normus's coffers and bowed down before the king of little things. The jewels jumped out of King Normus's crown. The fillings fell out of his teeth. The buttons jumped off of his coat. His suspenders surrendered. His belt broke, and his pants fell down. And if you were second graders, which apparently you are, you'll be laughing very hard right now. Thank you. That's my audience. So, there stood King Normus, trying to hold up both his pants and his pride, and he was so upset, he said, throw him in the dungeon, throw him in the dungeon. But when they got to the dungeon, once again, all of the little things recognized their king. The keys refused to unlock the locks. The nails jumped out of the doors and bowed down before the king of little things. King Normus said, put him in a cave, put him in a cave, put a big rock in front of the cave, no food, no water, until he surrenders his kingdom. So the king of little things went to the cave, and life in the cave wasn't entirely unpleasant. The ants brought him crumbs, the bees brought him honey, the birds brought him seeds, and little drops of water made their way down through the mountain and dripped into his mouth. But after a while, he got a little bit bored. He missed his queen, he missed his cottage. And so he sent word with the ants and the birds and the bees, asking them to ask the little things everywhere to do him a favor. And the ants carried the words like crumbs, and the bees painted the words on the flowers, and the birds dropped the words from the sky like rain. And all over the world, little things began to happen. Strings unstrung, hangers unhung, springs sprung, tables toppled, chairs folded, easels eased away, quilts quivered, quills quit, bolts bolted, words twisted, boats listed, fires froze, pickles undilled, bread broke, cookies crumbled, ticks and tocks left their clocks, everything everywhere quit working. And everybody knew that it was King Normus's fault, and they demanded that the king of little things be set free. Well, King Normus could see that he was beat, so he surrendered his crown, and he loaded some of his enormous possessions into his enormous wagon, including his enormous wife. She was very tall, and off they rode. And the people presented the crown to the king of little things, who asked very little of his new subjects, except that they leave crumbs for the ants, plant flowers for the birds and the bees, oil hinges regularly, say please and thank you, and tip generously. And everyone lived adequately ever after, except, of course, King Normus, who could never find his wallet or his comb or his pocket watch. And maybe even he will someday learn that it's the little things that matter the most.
Yay.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bill Lipp. What a great set of stories you had. What a wonderful day we've had. We've got a beautiful afternoon coming up, and we want to thank everybody for joining us on Facebook for this virtual migration celebration 2021. We want to thank Rodney Davis from Hanging Rock, who's also on our board of directors. We've got Bill Lipp here and Kevin Johnson over there from Beekeepers Collective. We're just very, very lucky that everybody was able to come out and help us out. We'd like to also introduce our staff. Alicia Seegers here is our research and rehabilitation technician. Griffin Stone, who may be able to turn the thing around to show himself. I'm not sure.
Hey. There we go.
There's Griffin Stone. He's our media specialist. And our education director is over talking with Kevin Johnson right now. That's Ron Peroni. I'm Wendy Peroni from Three Rivers Avian Center. I'm Executive Director. We want to do a big shout out and thank you to the West Virginia Legislature and to the Department of Arts, Culture, and History for their support of this festival for many years. We also want to thank Governor Jim Justice for his kind letter and for his support and for the support of the Governor's Civil Contingency Fund as well. So this has been the Migration Celebration 2021, and thank you all for watching. Have a wonderful time, and if you have want to help us out, please consider making donations to Three Rivers Avian Center. Our website is www.tracwv.org. You can always drop us a line via email. You can drop us a message. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. Come see us and join us. Thank you very much.